What is up, RotoGrinders? It is the start of 3.5 hours nonstop NFL DFS conversation. Start right now. Taking up the lock. It is week number Sweet 16. It is the People's Show. Myself, Bobby Gomes, TastefulTides, Tim. We're a minute or so late because we were arguing about Batman pre-show. Me and Tim are going to do our best to put aside. Bobby had the worst Batman takes, besmirching.
They weren't that bad. They weren't that bad.
They were pretty bad. I mean, they were pretty
okay,
bad.
So all right, let's get back into it. So you think Joaquin was better than Heath? Is that
they were both spectacular. They're both spectacular.
They're both good.
You think you think he was better than Heath?
Yes.
No. What do you mean either? No. Dean, you can't say that's a worse take.
They're both really, really, really strong. They're both really strong, and it's like they're both A+ performances. You know, I would say they're both better than Nicholson. How about that? They're both better than Jack.
That's fine.
Well, yeah.
That's fine.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So what my argument is that Barry Keoghan is going to have a better performance than Joaquin. Maybe I should have cut it down and said it was slower. If it's going to be closer, like the chalk, like if you want to play Singletary over Ty Chandler today,
tied to football.
It's going to be closer than what people will realize. I watched Saltburn last night and it was fantastic, and he was very, very good. And he's going to have to put it on the list. Joker.
I like that you're a sneaky movie buff, Bobby, and we'll have to discuss and have future conversations about it. You've recommended some movies to me. There's some that are on my list, and you get mad at me that I've not yet watched them just yet. But they're on the list, and we'll knock them out. I'm watching the Barbie movie this week because we're talking about it in the Pick Six show this Wednesday with Rebar and Daigle. Have not yet watched that just yet, but do want to say hello to the people in chat. What's up, chat? Kindly hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on those notifications. If we don't say it, if I forget to say it later, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Hope everybody's well. Enjoy the holiday weekend. Enjoy all the sports. Even on Monday, we got a bunch of football. 3-gamer looks spectacular on paper. Lots of basketball, lots of hoops as well. Just a 9-gamer because all the games spread throughout the week, right? Just 9 games on today's slate. Biggest total, Dallas, Miami. Last I saw, it is tumbled. I don't want to say tumbled, but it started, 51.5 or so? Yeah, now it's down to 47.5. That's, man, because it's 2 rough offensive lines right now, kind of beat up a little bit, and 2 pretty good defenses, and that was supposedly the premier game on the slate. If anything, for the watchability perspective, but also some studs too. We're expecting Tyreek Hill to go. I didn't say if he's officially in, but that's the assumption. It is a late game, 4 o'clock, so actives and inactives, we won't officially have that until after we're well into the slate. But Tim, it feels like a fun one because the slate feels kind of wide open, right? Biggest total, 47.5, Dallas, Miami. Did Detroit, Minnesota jump up? I meant to check that as well. I wouldn't be surprised that moved up a little bit. Nope, still at 47.5. I wrote this yesterday in my notes as far as I like to list the games in order of like highest total to lowest total. But Tim, welcome. This should be a fun show because would you agree with the assessment that today's slate is wide open? And also should mention Kevin Roth's going to be on later. Roth's actually hosting Crunch Time, but don't really need the weather report, at least unless something goofy really changes. It's kind of surprising. Everything is green. Nothing really lurking out there, despite the fact that it is December. But weather-wise, we should be clean and good to go. But Tim, welcome. And do you agree with the thought that's pretty wide open slate today?
I think this is an amazing slate for any kind of contest that you're playing in. It's only 9 games, and there's plenty of different ways you can go about it. Given some of the, I would say, below average type weeks in terms of totals and matchups, these are some pretty good totals and some pretty good matchups. There's a lot of guys on the high end that we want to play, and there's some bargain plays and tons of guys in the mid range. So there are several different ways that you can play cash games today. There's several different ways that you can do your lineup construction in terms of GPPs. I think this is one of my favorite weeks of the entire year when I've been building out teams. There's lots of different ways you can go.
Did I miss the memo, Tim? Did I miss the communication with yourself and producer Steve? Did you shuffle some cash game plays his way to give him
I did.
kind of an outline?
I did.
Okay, I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
It was not in the private chat, but all right, we'll have Steve build that up. I'm curious what you're going to throw our way as far as our cash game shell. Bobby, you focus much more on tournaments, obviously. What is your assessment? What are you seeing? Just a 9-gamer, again, on paper, I guess, or just sort of a watchability, Miami, Dallas. I didn't realize the line tumbled 4 points. That is pretty huge. Still one of the highest totals, if not the highest total on the board. And then otherwise, the slate is pretty wide open, injury-wise. Do we have clarity on the Packers receivers? Are we sure what's going on there as far as the Packers? Last I saw,
I don't think so.
Out. Wicks is questionable. We're expecting Wicks to play, and we may or may not see Jaden Reed. And if Reed doesn't go, Wicks would get the boost. Is there no official clarity on that?
I believe there's no official clarity on that. I believe that Reed is still questionable. We still have Reed in projections. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's still questionable.
Okay. Bobby, what are you looking at today as far as today's slates? Are you taking some big stands? What is the strategy? Oh boy, Bobby coming out on mute.
Rookie mistake, Dean. I have the same thought process as Tim. I think it's a fantastic GPP slate. I think there's a lot of strong chalk, but a lot of questionable chalk as well. And nice pivots in the salary range around the chalk. So I think that's something we'll get into. Yeah, I'm excited for this slate. I think it should be a good one.
Madison probably is going to be available for Minnesota. We'll see. We saw kind of the changing the guard last week with Chandler. I think Chandler's earned himself a pretty big chunk of that. The usage there for Minnesota in the backfield. Lawrence somehow again defies the odds. I thought it was going to be a beat hard, Beathard week. It's not. Trevor Lawrence expected to play. We think Tyreek's going to go. That's later on. Nico Collins expected back. Zay Jones unlikely to go. I think that was Rappaport that said Zay Jones unlikely to go. Will Levis unlikely to go. Probably going to see Tannehill. Geno, we're expecting Geno to play. No Moss for Indianapolis and Jonathan Taylor, who for me is one of my favorite plays in the slate. I'm really curious where he lands ownership wise, but to me, like Indianapolis paid him. They paid him a bunch of money. They have like a 50-50 shot to make the playoffs. I think they're going to feed him. I think they're going to feed him a lot. And like, you never really know as far as injuries. I think it was a thumb or a wrist, but if he's playing, I assume he is good to go. And, running back, we'll talk about it. Like this is like kind of the case of all these positions, Tim, right? Running back, the most expensive running back on FanDuel is on DK is White. Taylor's kind of right there. Like there's no CMC. There's no guaranteed 35 points to spend up on. Just got a lot. I want to bank my 35 CMC points. Not available. Right. And a lot of good teams. No Kansas City, no Philadelphia, no Buffalo. Just a lot of the fun teams for DFS are just not on this slate. So like you're almost kind of forced into. I hear people say, "Well, it's you're in the mid tier this week, right?" That's that. Well, you're kind of forced into it. There really isn't like it's this massive. Like obviously you can spend up on Lamb, you can spend up on, Tyreek. I know Jefferson's gonna be really popular, a little bit cheaper. But it just sort of feels like you're living in the mid-tier this week. But, your thoughts in general before I guess we can kind of open up. Did we give Steve enough time to build our cash game shell? Hopefully we did. And he'll throw it up on the board. Oh, you got a lot of names for the people. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I started out this is just for cash. I think he's fine for tournaments also. But, I mean, I started out with Nick Mullins in a dome against that Detroit secondary. He's dirt cheap. He's 5,300. He's got very, very, very strong weapons that he can throw to. I know that he's no Kirk Cousins. I know he's not, the most amazing quarterback on the slate. But it really came down to Nick Mullins or Justin Fields for me in terms of cash. Now, I elected to take the savings because there's a pretty big price gap between those two. So I decided to go with Nick Mullins as my cash game quarterback. Like I said, I think you could do Justin Fields if you wanted to go up a little bit higher. And then I was looking at our projections, and we're only giving Madison like a couple of rush attempts. So, I mean, we're really giving the true line share to Ty Chandler. So I still think at 5,600, he's definitely cash game viable. It's not like he got some kind of big price increase, and I'm not really too worried about Madison handcuffing him. So I elected to go with Ty Chandler in cash games. Justin Jefferson is just way too cheap. Again, in a dome, 8,100. Detroit secondary. He's going to be extremely popular in tournaments, but we don't care about that in cash games. So I'm going with 3 Vikings. I think that's going to be a really good pace up matchup. Again, in a dome, pretty good overall total, 47.5, I believe. So those are my 3 Vikings. And then I wanted exposure to the Commanders defense. So I went with Breece Hall at 6,100. And then I think Trey McBride, he's basically a wide receiver in terms of the usage that he gets. So it's like, I know 5,700 is a lot to pay for a tight end. Usually we like to punt the tight end position, but Trey McBride is essentially a wide receiver. So I'm not too worried about paying the 5,700 for him.
Yeah, and the other part is with McBride, a lot of times you punt tight end, you have the money because you're not really spending it in a lot of places. I'm not playing cash today, Tim. Not playing the cash games, but if I was, I will be doing my best to get to Fields instead of Mullins. I know why Mullins is popping. What are you getting? What's is it like a 2v2? Like Mullins and somebody versus Fields and somebody? What made you go Mullins over Fields? I know you said you wanted Fields, but you settled on Mullins.
Yeah, well, so if you look at my shell, it only leaves you a certain amount of money left. So it's like either way, like I can get to guys like if I go this way, I can go to guys like DJ Moore or Devin Singletary. I can just kind of like live in that mid range because I'm highly uncomfortable with the extremely cheap wide receivers unless Reed is out. And then we can go to the cheaper Green Bay. But Reed is still technically projected in. I don't want to go to guys like Mingo or Mooney, so I want to stay kind of more in that balanced approach, which you cannot do if you go Justin Fields.
Bobby, you're in the world of tournaments. I feel like I heard you say this in the Tournament Take podcast. I heard yourself and Kirkwood as well as Noto. I believe you said Mullins, if he's going to be chalky, you want no part of that. Did you say that? Are you standing by that? Because he's currently, again, only 18 quarterbacks this week, 18 starting quarterbacks. We're giving 22% ownership to Justin Fields on DK. By the way, we did get a new batch of ownership about 5 or 10 minutes ago. If you guys want to have your lineup HQ open, by all means, give it a refresh. 22% for Fields, 18% for Mullins, then a drop to Baker Mayfield at 8%, Geno at 7%. Heineke, whatever. If you like anybody else beyond that, you're just don't care about ownership. It's basically Fields and Mullins. Those are the guys that you get the most. Is that kind of where your stand was? Is that where you're still at there, Bobby, as far as Mullins feels like bad? I don't want to say bad chalk. Maybe you can say bad chalk because really, Nick Mullins, this is the guy we're all gravitating to. I know it's in a dome and he's got good pieces, good matchup and all that kind of stuff. It's still Nick Mullins though, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you. My thought process is it's Nick Mullins. Well, I do like these Minnesota guys. I do think you can poke holes in both Chandler and Jefferson. Like Jefferson being tied to Mullins is a huge hole in my opinion. Ty Chandler on the other side. Detroit's been better against the run last 5 weeks. So I don't know. And then you could possibly have Madison there. Do we have confirmation on Madison?
The expectation is that he should be available, but probably limited to some degree. It seems pretty clear, according to reports, that it's Chandler's backfield.
Yeah. Either way, I think they're fine plays. I think one of them probably gets there, but I think one of them probably busts as well of Chandler and Jefferson. And then Nick Mullins, there's guys in that range. I could play outside of Nick Mullins. I really don't have a ton of interest in tournaments. In cash, I think I'd be trying to get to Fields too. I think I'd probably go down to Wicks, and I'm pretty sure Jaden Reed's going to sit, right? He's on the side. He's more doubtful than anything else. So
it seems that way. Yeah. I think, are we still projecting him? I feel like we were still projecting him, at least as of yesterday. But yeah, he's still being projected for what it's worth. So if you're looking at projections and wondering why Wicks is not looking spectacular necessarily, he's still currently in projections. By the way, the official report was from Tom Pelissero. Said Madison expected to play today against Detroit, source said, but he's not 100%. Expect Minnesota to keep riding Ty Chandler. So, and Pelissero is legit reporter. He's not a nobody. So that probably checks out. So seems like it's Chandler's job. Madison's there, but they're not going to give him much.
Yeah, we have Madison for 2.66 rushing attempts.
Yeah. You're not playing him as a contrarian play. You're either just not playing. You're either playing Chandler or you're not playing Chandler. Right. Madison to me is just not that relevant. Is that fair to say? Just like he's not something in my pool. Yeah. There's no reason to get that ambitious. Okay, unless it's like an erroneous report, but I don't. And Madison's been terrible all season long. Like they've been waiting for somebody to unseat him, and it took forever. Bobby, is it a sore subject? Should I ask about how the best ball's doing? Are we lined up today for some? We got some bullets that kind of passed through.
We're not. It's a sore subject. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I'm
sorry.
I like fourth.
You know if he doesn't bring it up. He doesn't want to talk.
Typical influencer.
Touting 101. Yeah. If you're well positioned, look at me. Look at me. I'm a best ball genius.
Becomes a big look at me. Yep. No, that's the blueprint.
But process versus results, you still have like 40% A-Chan. That's good. I have like 50% Chandler is the reason why, because I was look at me. Look at my Chandler teams dying.
A-Chan and likely process versus results. Good plays.
It's unbelievable. I wound up in the wrong pod. I think those things happen sometimes too, I suppose. But what's your thoughts there, Bobby, as far as that cash game shell? Otherwise, that Tim threw out there, Chandler, a fair bit of Minnesota.
I prefer Flacco to Nick Mullins. Like, I know Fields would be my preferred option in cash, trying to get to Fields. But I think I'd go Flacco over Mullins if I had to choose someone in his range. I think Flacco's in a very good spot this week. They haven't thrown the ball a ton. I know they're on the road, so it kind of hurts Amari Cooper's home road splits, if you believe in all that stuff.
Do you?
They're in a dome, right? So
yeah,
Amari's always dome helps Amari. For me, I just can't play. I wouldn't be putting a lot of money on the line with Nick Mullins this week.
The Flacco thing is wild because if he just covered the name, like you didn't know this is Joe Flacco, it's just quarterback X, right? 44 attempts, 45 attempts, 44 attempts, just firing away there in Cleveland. And it's a good matchup here against Houston. I think Houston's been better against the run as opposed to the pass. You like dome games this time of year as well. He's got some interesting pairings. You mentioned Cooper. If you want to scrape the barrel, Elijah Moore's there, and Njoku, who's been spectacular with Flacco. It's just, again, the name is a little bit kind of shocking, but like dude wasn't in the league 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, but off the couch, and he's become like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
The Flacco stacks and tournaments, like the doubles with Cooper and Njoku, seem like a direct pivot off Mullins, Chandler, and Jefferson. You could throw Singletary into it. I know Singletary is going to be relatively chalky. I think Singletary might be my preferable option to Chandler. I also like Chuba Hubbard in that range. Not in terms of cash for Hubbard, but in tournaments, I think he's an interesting pivot off of Chandler, as well as Singletary, who is cash viable. So, just my thoughts.
Not to backtrack, but one of our favorite, Tim's best friend in real life and our favorite troll in real life, Broccoli Boy, is talking about Cesar Romero. He's talking about the Joker takes. He was actually on Bobby's side, apparently, and then he referenced Cesar Romero. It's like, I mean, we're going that far. He's like the 40s or the 50s or 60s or something like that. Come on, Tim, your boy, Broccoli Boy, bringing up Cesar Romero. Like, seriously, this is what we're talking about in the Joker conversation?
If you didn't have him blocked on Twitter, then he could talk to you about this stuff. So
he's not blocked on Twitter. He's officially unblocked. But I don't want to talk about Cesar.
Do you follow him, Dean, or are you a follower snob? You won't press the button.
I don't think I'm a follower snob.
It took you forever to follow me, so.
I have no idea. Well, I don't know. Were we doing a show when I wasn't following you? That's uncomfortable. Wasn't intentional.
No. This was like a couple of years in the DFS.
Oh,
we had cross-pollination in terms of friends. Like, we definitely knew each other. You know what I mean? Like, see each other in the streets. I
would walk to the other side. Like, I don't want to.
You and Blender were the toughest. Blender. Anyone who has DFS in their bio, I automatically follow them. I give out I don't know. I just feel, you know what I mean? Try to be Community's
Hold
very
on a
niche,
second.
you know.
I got to see how many people you follow now. You're bragging about like how you follow 1,400. Okay, so that's a legit number. Let's see. Let me see how many. I think I follow like at least 1,000 accounts. I'm not sure. I follow 1,100. Yeah, I'm not a snob. I'm not a follower snob. That's 1,100 is a pretty big number. And then there's Tim. We can get to Tim if we really want to. He probably
Tim's
follows
very, very quick with the block trigger.
I block everybody instantly.
Is that true?
Pretty much, yeah.
Tim follows 1,300. Okay, so Tim's not a
You
snob.
can tell
either.
a lot about Tim by his like approach to Twitter and his favorite Joker being Joaquin Phoenix. Not that Joaquin Phoenix is a bad Joker, but just from
I was gonna say, what's wrong with that? He's certainly not a
standpoint.
bad Joker.
Yeah, I mean it's a bad take to be taking shots at Joaquin Phoenix for sure. I tip, by the way, multitasking, answering questions in chat. You fire after questions. We want the chat to help drive this show because we're here for the next hour or so. We yield to Squirrel Patrol, Beimfohr as well. Mentioned Roth coming in, Dre. I don't remember who the last person is, but I was looking at the sheet. Who comes in as far as the crunch? Oh, TJ. You got TJ Zwarych, one of the greatest DFS players in all of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Andre as well. And again, Roth on a Sunday coming in. We'll be hosting Crunch Time. Do hit that like button as well. We appreciate that. Like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, hit all the buttons, hit everything. There's some questions there in regards to DK Cash. I guess you answered this question, right? Garrett Wilson versus Calvin Ridley. Your answer was Ridley, and I agree. I think Ridley's the answer as opposed to Garrett Wilson, although Garrett Wilson has a spectacular matchup versus Washington. But Zay Jones, by the way, did I say Jones is likely out? If I didn't, he is. By the way, A.J. Dillon expected to play today, it seems like. He's in the positive side, which I thought it was going to be Jones's backfield. Does not appear to be that is the case. Looks like Jones will have Dillon backing him up.
That's
All right.
going to bring
Anything
down.
else?
That's going to bring down Jones's ownership though, which I like for tournaments. I really like Aaron Jones today. I'm kind of glad that Dillon's playing, to be honest with you, because if he wasn't, I think Jones was going to get mega steamed, and now it's going to like keep his ownership in check. I think so. I really like Aaron Jones for tournaments.
Let's see. What is Jones currently as far as ownership? We're kind of bouncing around, but that's sort of what we do. Should we close up the cash game? Anything else you want to say as far as cash? We can have Steve take it off the screen. Is there anything else that's integral, or we're good to go? We can move on.
We can move on.
Yeah, what's interesting. Go ahead, Bobby.
Oh no, I was just saying we can move on.
Running back wise, it's pretty condensed, right? Chandler, Breece Hall are 1-2, 28%, 27%. I was hoping Jonathan Taylor would stay down, and I guess he's not because you have the salary for it. It's not hard to find the salary for it. Not cash game, but just tournament stuff, Bobby. White versus Taylor. Who do you prefer amongst those two? It looks like you're going to get a pretty similar ownership. 25% for Taylor on DK, White 21%. I know Cardi in the Blitz, unless something has changed. I was looking at it yesterday. I was stepping in and hosting the Blitz show. That game is expecting to have the most plays, Atlanta and Indy in a dome. Checks those boxes. So and again, I think there's a pretty real chance that like Taylor's just going to get like basically all the touches for Indianapolis. We know he was paid this year. We know they have to win. They're in striking distance to make the playoffs. Might as well go for it. Your thoughts as far as Taylor versus White? What about paying for both? Is that an interesting route that people won't do? They're probably not going to double spend at running back. What's your approach to those two?
I definitely think that's an interesting route, which I really haven't thought of. For me, it was going to be one or the other, and I was going to take the savings in terms of ownership. I think it's very close. I would prefer White currently at the lower ownership clip, but I think it's an extremely, extremely tight situation. So flip a coin. I know it's a terrible, it's like one of the worst takes you can have as a tout, but I don't know. I think I'd prefer White, but they're very close in projection.
I usually use my magic 8-ball. That works for me sometimes, but you never really know.
Can you give us a read?
I'll give it a shake and see. Let's see. The problem is it's kind of old, And like, you know, I don't know if you've ever had a Magic 8 Ball, but like it gets harder to read as the longer you have it. Like it gets like murky, the water in there. So I can't even like read what it says. At this point, it's just basically a prop. I got to get a new Magic 8 Ball. That's what it says. Do I need to get a new Magic 8 Ball? Yeah, I need a new one. But yeah, put that on the old, maybe Santa can hook it up this year on short notice. You have a thought of that, Tim, as far as the two, I don't want to say the two big spends, two of the bigger spends at running back, Taylor versus White?
I would definitely lean Taylor. But I mean, White is completely fine. I don't think that I want to spend on both. I don't know if I want to take up that much salary in my running back position. I don't think that I love White's floor. I'm not sure about his ceiling. So 7,400 is like peak price for him. So I definitely like Jonathan Taylor. I really like that Colts Falcons game, just general super fast paced game, fastest on the slate. So getting exposure to that game is going to be very, very important. But yeah, the thing is that, I mean, we'll get to it, but I really like this Jacksonville, pass attack. So like they have a very, very condensed, target tree. So getting, White as a run back, I think is fine if you're loading up on some Jacksonville wide receivers.
So pulled up, I kind of referenced it, the blitz, the game level factors. Atlanta Indy has 138.7 plays projected, which is almost 3 more than the next fastest game. The next fastest game, Cleveland and Houston. So like if you want a lot of plays, those are a couple games that are pretty interesting, and also 2 games that happen to be in Dome. So I think they're pretty appealing for a couple different reasons. Rob in chat is asking about Gibson as a viable punt for cash. I'll ask that for you, Tim. I don't think so. I don't see it.
No,
doesn't seem necessary. And find the money. Yeah.
Find the 300. Find the 300 for Singletary.
Let's bounce back to quarterback. I don't know why I bounced the running back so quickly, and I wanted to get everybody's thoughts as far as quarterback. And I know, Bobby, you typically have 4 or 5 guys you hone in on, and that's that. Those are your quarterbacks. Is that the strategy this week? If you pick 4 or 5 out of the 18, and if so, who are those guys?
Yeah. So for me, I really like Flacco. Like I said, he's right in that Mullins range. Justin Fields is another one. So that would be 2. Dak at that low ownership clip, like their pass rate over expectation pretty much all season has been fantastic. So I don't mind going to him in tournaments, especially if you're getting him that low owned. Which I would imagine he gets a little bit steamed up, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere significant. Like he'll still come in under 10%. So I like Dak a good bit. I think you can make a case for Heineke in that pace-up game that we talked about at 4,800. I just think that basically versus Indy, it's a good matchup. He does a lot with his legs. It's cheap. And I know it's not like we would probably be considering Ritter here. Like we wouldn't want to play Ritter, but we would be considering him. I think Heineke's better than Ritter, so I can go Heineke's way. And then Trevor Siemian at 4.7. A lot of people aren't going to like Trevor Siemian. I like Trevor Siemian. Like we've seen him be efficient with the Saints last season or 2 years ago. At 4,700, I can do it. Quarterback's not the strongest position on the slate. But yeah, I like Siemian a little bit. Trevor Lawrence is very condensed, like Tim said. You can always get to – he's the one I worry about with like his ceiling issues are just like – obviously it's a great matchup versus Tampa, but can we see a ceiling from Trevor Lawrence? He's a little banged up.
He had that game where he ran in a couple touchdowns. Yeah, go ahead.
I love Trevor Lawrence in tournaments today. He might be the guy that I play in single entry. But I completely agree with Bobby. Like I do have ceiling concerns with him. I just love the target tree. Like I love Ridley. I love Ingram. It's like I know where the ball is going to be going, and I love the matchup. So it's like I feel very, very confident about who I compare him with. So I really like Lawrence today at 6,600. I think he's like a really strong pivot away from Fields, but it's not like I disagree necessarily with Bobby. Like I do kind of question if he's got a ceiling at that price tag, but he's only 4% owned. Like he's going to be super low owned.
32 DK points, week 11, it looks like, but that's when he had the 2 rushing touchdowns, right? You can't really assume that's going to happen, but he can move a little bit, right? It's possible. I assume he's good to go as far as the concussion. He passed it, and he's going to play, and he's going to be fine. They're properly motivated as well. They're facing, and I guess this is part of it as well, Tim, right? The matchup against Tampa. We know Tampa, the easier way to get through them is via the air as opposed to the ground. The loss of Zay Jones, the pairings are pretty concise. That's got to be part of it as well. You're going to have one or two of, Ridley, Engram. If you're, desperate for salary, maybe a Parker Washington, maybe a Jamal Agnew, but ideally it's Ridley Engram. Is that what we're looking at, Tim?
Yeah, definitely Ridley Engram. I mean, exactly. I mean, I think Ridley's going to be absolutely peppered with targets, and he's a really good cash and large field GPP play today. So I absolutely love Lawrence to Ridley today.
Favorite run back if are you making a game stack out of it, I assume, or you're gonna run it back? Probably White or Evans, one of those two.
It's basically gotta be White, Evans, or I guess Godwin, right? Or you could be really sneaky and do double tight end with Auten or something like that. But it's likely White, who I don't know. That is absolute peak price for him. So I guess I'm not huge on White. I don't know if you necessarily need to have a run back, but I love going to Lawrence single, and if you do a Lawrence double, then maybe you should do a run back.
Hey Bobby, what do you think of double tight end today? Is there anything sort of rules you're kind of pushing it or neglecting it? Are you forcing it? Are you not allowing it to happen? I think you can. Hawkinson, Laporta in the same game is an interesting little way to get different. McBride obviously looks spectacular. And Njoku looks pretty good. The wide receiver pool is not amazing this week. The tight end pool is pretty good considering what it typically is. Is this something that you're exploring?
Yeah, I think it's super viable, especially when we have a slate where we don't have a ton of value. I feel like you can get to double tight end a good bit. We have some very strong options with McBride, with Njoku, with Engram. I think Laporta is interesting for tournaments. For sure, he's going to be very low owned and definitely has ceiling upside. So he's someone I want to get to a good bit. But yeah, I also even in the low end range, Tucker Kraft. If Jaden Reed's out, I think Jonnu Smith is a great matchup based on coverage. So these are all guys that I would consider.
You like Jonnu more than you like Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. I looked at those two and I have no idea. And I don't like playing Pitts, especially if he was in the 4s. 4K on DK. Jonnu is 2.9. Is Jonnu your favorite punt tight end, flat out punt?
I don't think I'm going to be punting too much. I'd probably prefer Tucker Kraft, but he's definitely the guy if I'm going below 3K at 2.9. For sure. He just seems like a good play. As good of a play as an Atlanta tight end with Taylor Heineke throwing them the football can be.
There you go. Otten 3.3, depending on where you cut off where punts are. Kraft, you kind of reference a 3.7. You have a thought on that, Tim? Your favorite punt tight end, however you want to answer that question. So the thing is, Chig comes up a ton. I don't know. I don't get it because I don't think he scored double digits all season long, and I know he looks good in the uniform. He's athletic and all that kind of stuff, but it's just not happened. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. Eventually, I suppose it might happen, but I'm kind of confused how Chig keeps grading out pretty well as a punt. I don't know. What do you got there, Tim, as far as your favorite punt tight end?
Yeah, punt tight end this week is really ugly. I think it's probably Cade Otton would be my favorite. If you consider 3.7 a punt, I think Tucker Kraft is interesting. So against Carolina. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, Chig is fine at 3.1, but nobody lower than that. I wouldn't go any lower. There's no really, really good below 3.1, 3.2 tight end.
All right. I like when the chat just kind of guides the show, makes it sort of bounce around. So if the chat just kind of guides it, I like that. But man, I'm gonna need some help here, boys, because Bodyguard's asking about Ethan Pernia, who is allegedly a wide receiver, professional football player for the Indianapolis Colts. He's 3K. And then somebody else asked about DJ Montgomery, who's 3.3, another Colt receiver. Pittman is out. They are cheap. It's hard to pick one of their tight ends, Granson or Cox.
Who did you say after Premier, Dean?
DJ
Premier?
Montgomery. Yeah, DJ Montgomery. Okay. Alec Pierce. So, like, if you can figure out, like, which – I mean, I think Josh Downs is very clearly, like, the most popular, like, the most appealing amongst this group of Indianapolis, pass catchers. But, like, somebody's going to catch the ball. Or maybe Jonathan Taylor just runs the ball and there has, like, 30 touches. We'll see. And, again, this game is expected to have a ton of plays. But do you have an Ethan Fournier or DJ Montgomery take? If any, they're super cheap.
So,
yeah. Go ahead.
We have Fournier projected for 0.24 fantasy points. So he would definitely not make my player pool. But we do have DJ Montgomery projected for 7.5 fantasy points. So he's going to at least be out there for a little bit of time. I don't mind Alec Pierce at 4K. I mean, he's actually like a real life wide receiver who's, you know what I mean? Like, right. Well, yeah. And he's got reasonable skills. He's only 4,000. So, I mean, spend this extra 700 for Alec Pierce. I don't think he's going to be popular either. I'll check his ownership right now. He's only going to be 3.5%. So I would say Alec Pierce. Downs is 5.5K. He's going to be 10% owned. I don't know. Like, I was thinking, we should play Downs, but I don't know if he can really be like that target hog guy that we want. He doesn't seem like to be that type of player. I'm not really sure. But I really do want exposure to this game. So that's what's kind of like leaning me towards Jonathan Taylor or like an Alec Pierce.
Downs has been bad for like 5 or 6 straight games. I know he's dealing with an injury as well. So I'm a little conflicted on that one too. Like, and you never really know how much he's still dealing with something possibly. But it certainly feels like, ever since he got hurt, he's been rough. Like, theoretically, he's probably like the de facto number one, if there is a number one for Indy today. But again, it's, if you want to be the old game log guy instead of like the hand in the dirt guy, it's rough, man. It's a rough looking game log for Josh Downs. Again, Pittman being out opens up opportunity. Bobby, you are our hand in the dirt guy on this show. As the hand in the dirt guy, do you know? Could you tell us about DJ Montgomery? Or even Fournier, is it worth even digging into those two?
Fournier, I don't have really any interest in. When I was running like industry projections last night, I got a good bit of DJ Montgomery, and I had no idea who he was. And then I went and looked back, and he had 63% of the snaps last week, 4 targets. He'd be my preferable between the two for sure. I don't know how much I'm going to get him, but it is a pace-up spot. We should be liking players from this game, so I wouldn't X them out of your player pool. I definitely have them in there.
How much are you getting? Are you getting any Alec Pierce, Bobby?
No.
Really? Okay.
And Minshew wasn't one of your guys either, right? So you're not really focusing on those any receivers.
No, it would just be JT and a little bit of Montgomery.
Let's see if we can help Nick out. He's got a really important short 2-part question. Let's see, for half PPR. So this must be for season long. We like to answer the season long questions.
Well, you could answer this one, Dean.
I am in like the Sirius. I'm in the Sirius XM. I'm not sure if it's the finals or the semifinals, but I'm in that. I got to represent for RotoGrinders. Ingram or Ferguson at tight end? I think it's Ingram. I think it's Ingram over Ferguson. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. I think
it's Ingram.
Yeah. Do I go Sutton for the remaining tight end my flex? Okay, so Sutton. Oh, then it's Sutton versus Ferguson. Who is Sutton playing?
Yeah, we don't even know. I don't even know who Sutton's playing. I saw this question in chat. I have no idea. Who do they even play?
Do they play tomorrow? I guess they play tomorrow.
This guy's probably like, these guys don't even know who this guy's plays. They're not real. They're not real.
Oh, they play New England tonight. They play your Patriots. You're not a real Patriots fan.
Oh, wow.
Bob,
right now.
Oh, this is a bad look.
Not a real Patriots fan. Currently not. It's Tim's Patriots too.
What?
You guys are terrible Patriots fans.
Tim, you're a Patriots fan. You live in Maine. You don't have anything to do but watch the Patriots and drink Dunkin' Donuts.
That's true. That's
drink what?
That's definitely true.
Fish.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Fish. You're allowed to do that.
Eat lobster.
I don't like lobster.
Fish, yeah.
I've told you.
You're going to get evicted out of the state. Oh my God! Don't tell the authorities.
Why do you live there? It's like the only thing you can do.
It's a good question.
clam chowder?
It's a good question.
Sutton versus Ferguson. I think it's Sutton, but I don't.
I still think it's Sutton.
Bobby versus your Patriots.
Sutton and who? Ferguson.
Ferguson, the tight end for Dallas.
I would go Sutton. Why not?
Tim, remember once upon a time you promised me you're going to send me something in the mail, and you never did.
I know.
Do not take it. Someone posted it in chat. Do not take advice from guys who have no clue who's on the schedule.
Well, I'm focused on one slate. When we get to the showdown slate, we'll get to it.
Focused on slates. Yeah. When I have to look at showdown, I'll look at showdown. You get the information as it comes. We don't need to waste on Denver Broncos game.
So Tim, there's a beverage. My understanding, it's a local beverage, and I don't know if it's Maine exclusive or it's up in the New England area only. Moxie. I love the name. You once promised me you're going to send me Moxie in the mail. I love when anybody's described as having Moxie, but there's a beverage called Moxie. You can drink Moxie. It's apparently very divisive.
It's going to happen, Dean. It will happen. You and I are going to drink Moxie live on air, and it's going to be a very difficult experience for you. It's going to be very hard. Yeah.
Is it an acquired taste?
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. So
if I were to go in the playerprofiler.com and type in Moxie, what is the closest comp to Moxie?
I don't even know. Those guys
what would you describe it as?
They're not in the league anymore. That's for sure. I don't know. I don't even know what it tastes like. It's been usually I mix it with alcohol just to I don't know, get rid of the Moxie taste. So it's
you aware of this, Bobby? Has Moxie hit the Boston area?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
I don't think it's in Boston. I think it's pretty much just Maine. It's the official drink of Maine.
Okay.
Yeah. Broccoli Boy says Moxie is Dennis Rodman or Antonio Brown. So
I'm more intrigued, but I'm a little scared too. A little scared.
Yeah, but the thing is, Dennis Rodman and Antonio Brown were great players, and Moxie is not a great drink. So that's not correct. So,
we got bashed again for the no schedule. Who's that? Conscious Machine 413. Do not take advice from guys who have no clue who's on the schedule. The thing is, we do know who's on the schedule. This isn't our schedule. We're focused on NFL DFS here, so they're not on the.
There's a specific show that's dedicated to to Showdown Slate later on today. We don't host. We're not a part of it. It's probably like TJ and Will. Kyle partakes in those. I know Chop partakes in those, but that's not our wheelhouse. That's not our MO. We stay in our lane. Although Bobby does, you do crush the Showdown slates. I know you have been crushing Showdown slates. Are you excited? Are you going to play New England, Denver? That seems like you don't have to watch it. You can just play it, right? You can do something else.
Depends on the prize pools. It's Christmas Eve, so I kind of have to be a little bit focused on what's going on with my family this week. So
you got to say hello.
You got to say hi. Yeah. Do the stuff, do the things, all the things you need to do. As a dad,
I just lost my side monitor, so I'm going to be playing injured the rest of the way for the next 40 minutes or so until we yield to crunch time. Bobby, Tim, you were talking about in your single entry stuff. Are you married to it? You mentioned that Lawrence seemed like the leader of the clubhouse has been. You make only 2 or 3 lineups essentially. You're gonna have Mullins your cash guy, Lawrence is your tournament guy, most likely. But are you open to change?
Yeah, definitely it would be Fields, but I just, he's going to be super, super high owned. And I think the pieces that go along with him, like DJ Moore, are going to be very, very highly owned also. That's the only reason why I'm a little bit hesitant getting to the Chicago stuff. But they're fantastic plays and a fantastic matchup. So it's certainly, I'm certainly not trying to tell anybody not to play Fields. I think I'm leaning towards guys like Mullins and Lawrence, and who else was I looking at? Maybe even like a Taylor Haneke at 4,800. We love the pace of that game. I want to play Jonathan Taylor. So like Heineke to like Drake London stack, I think would be interesting. But yeah, I don't think I can get up to like Dak or Tua, even though obviously that game is amazing. So I feel like I have to either kind of like punt quarterback or go to a really condensed target tree like Jacksonville.
What are the Sims saying there, Bobby? What's SimLabs telling us? Running a pile of lineups. Prescott and Tua just kind of not going to get played, right? I did kind of reference how that totals like dropped as the week has progressed. Last we saw it's 47.5. It opened at 51.5. There are some line issues. I'm not officially sure who's going to be good to go, but like Martin for Dallas. Smith is another guy who there's been drastic splits over the years with him for Dallas. And I know Miami's offensive line has been pretty beat up as well. But are we supposed to get over the field if you're running a bunch of lineups? Dak at 5%, Tua at 5%. They certainly have some of the bigger ceilings out there. The ready-made pairings, if you have the salary, that's the other tricky part. It's like, Dak and Lamb. Okay, where do I go now? Because those guys are expensive. I'm going to run it back with Tyreek, and now you're pretty much, you're really scraping the barrel for sure. But maybe that's why we play them, right? Because people aren't going to play them. Dak and Tua, what's our official take here, Bobby? I know you sort of talk about your quarterbacks, but, it's not that hard to get over the field if you want to. It's just that most people aren't doing it.
Yeah, I prefer Dak to CD. The Sims, I see a lot of Flacco. I'll say that, a lot of Flacco. Before I made like my own adjustments to projections, it was just hammering Flacco. That's usually the guy that I think you want to be on the side of when they're showing so much of one guy. So that's why I'm going to try to force in Flacco, even if after I added some stuff, I lost him a little bit. But yeah, I think that in terms of Dak and Tua, it would definitely be the Dak to CD side for me. I just don't think Tua really has the ceiling. I like the running backs in Miami as contrarian, like pivot plays. H-Hands at 7,100. We know he has a very high ceiling. Mostert's in the mix as well. They're right around that Jonathan Taylor, Rachaad White chalk in terms of pricing. So I think they're interesting pivots, and they could be quality run backs of a Dak and a CD Lamb stack for tournaments. Tyreek Tua, it's just like Tyreek has a fantastic ceiling. I think he'll be fine. I think he was dancing. I remember reading it. He was dancing on the sideline last week. I think he'll be good to go. So I'd probably be trying to get over there, depending on how much room I have in terms of the cap. But in terms of Tua, there's not really much. I don't really have any interest in Tua.
You think Hill's got a shot at 2,000 yards or his targets? I think he's got to average around like 150, 160 or so the rest of the way. And they will almost definitely be motivated week 18 because they play against Buffalo. That probably is a game that's going to matter. Is that something that's within striking distance here, Bobby? Do you think you get 2,000 yards out of Hill?
So I prefer CD to Hill, but if you follow that narrative and you think Hill's chasing the record, like you should definitely be allocating some of your exposure to Hill. I just wanted to give like a definitive take. For me, it's CD over Hill.
All right. Chat's asking about cheap wide receivers. Well, let's have the cheap conversation first as far as wide receivers. I see the guy giving us the business conscious machine about not knowing what the Patriots in Denver is telling us to play the fourth receiver for Green Bay, Malik Heath. I guess that is an option, I suppose. But Bodyguard's asking who are cheap receivers. Oh, cheap wide receiver for cash. I'll go to Tim on that. Do you feel like you have to?
I mean,
the way your build's going.
Well, if Reed is out, it's Wicks 100%.
Yeah.
That's like a no-brainer. Projection systems love Mingo. I don't really love him. I'd almost rather play DJ Montgomery, but I think Mingo, I guess, is safer for cash. Parker Washington would be interesting. He's only 3,800. I think Elijah Moore maybe would be okay, but in terms of like super cheap, like if Reed is out, Wicks is the easy play, and then it's kind of a toss up for me between DJ Montgomery and Mingo. I really don't want to play Mingo in cash. I think Mooney. How much is Mooney? I can't find Mooney. Okay, Mooney I think is kind of interesting at 3-3 also.
You did not say my favorites. Let's see if Bobby says my favorite. Who's your favorite cheap wide receiver, Bobby? And I know you were talking for cash specifically, but yeah, of course, that's the guy, right? Like,
yeah, he's a fantastic.
He wouldn't be
fantastic GPP. Yeah, not for cash though.
Yeah,
I mean, if you have 3-7 left, and that's that. Like,
if you have 3-7, he's fine based on the context of the slate. Like, we're starving for like some salary. I would say that Wicks is definitely, Tim's right on Wicks. He's definitely the better cash game play.
They seem to like his ability and his talent too. Like, there's some positive coach speak there. I do think, like Tim's saying, you want Reed out of the way. So he's still going to play some. They'll play some 3 wide receiver sets. They'll kind of rotate guys in and out. And also, if you're really scraping the barrel, you want to bet on talent. Treylon Burks, who's been in and out of lineup all season long. He's, for Tennessee, changing in the guard there. Like, 3-1, man. I just believe he's talented. And speaking of best ball, he was on a lot of my best ball teams, which maybe speaks to why my best ball teams are not playing today. But he appears to be healthy. I'm not afraid of Seattle. The quarterback change to Sandy Hill probably doesn't hurt him. But really, my favorite is Jameson Williams. He looks like he jumped. Was it Reynolds or Raymond? At least one of those two, as far as targets last week. They're manufacturing stuff for him too, like giving him little dump offs, like kind of getting him in space. They're handing the ball off to him occasion as well because they know he is electric when he's in the open field. He's on the turf as well, which I like. Like he's just running more stuff than like he was earlier in the season where he was like barely on the field. Obviously, a lot of draft equity too. It shows when he has the ball in his hand. So is he going to be one of the more popular ones, Bobby Jameson? I think he is. People like him, right? Kind of sexy. But I think for good reason.
I think he also benefits just from the matchup. It's a very good matchup versus Minnesota. He's getting a lot of like first read targets when facing the blitz, and Minnesota's going to blitz a ton. People would think that would be St. Brown, but it's been Laporta and Jameson Williams. So yeah, I like pretty much. I'm down in Detroit's offense, but I think at that price tag for Jameson Williams, and if you want to pay up to Laporta to be contrarian, I think those are the most interesting plays.
Let's see. Jumping back to the chat, seeing what I'm missing. Which NFL defensive squad quits today? Shannon wants to know. Some are just not that good. Like, yeah. Right. It's like, well, that team quit. Well, maybe they're just not that good. They're just not that good anymore, or they're all beat up. Do you have a read on that, Tim? Is there? You can sort of answer like who's like the worst defense, the defense you want to pick on. I think that leads to the conversation of the Jets. And I know I kind of passed over it when, Bobby was talking about Trevor Siemian, like a Jets quarterback he's touting. But he's 4-7. Washington has been horrendous. They traded away their best players. Every defense is via the air, even on the ground. Every offense it is, but this Jets offense is completely inept. I don't know what to do with it, but I know Bobby seemed to like Trevor Siemian. I'll get his sales pitch in a second, but yeah, Breece Hall feels like he's kind of lost some juice, but he projects well. I don't know what to do with these Jets today, Tim. It's kind of the X factor for me. And Garrett Wilson is another guy. Theoretically, if you sim it out, he probably plays great, but they actually do play the game. And I don't know. We haven't seen it a lot, but he looks great. You tell me.
So Breece Hall's projected for 27% ownership, and then Garrett Wilson is projected for 20% ownership. So they're both going to be extremely highly owned. I'm leading the Breece side of that. Maybe I don't trust Siemian as much as maybe I should. I understand that this Commanders defense is absolutely atrocious. But I'm going to lean on Hall over Wilson. I don't know, though. I mean, you want to talk about a defense that could quit. It could easily be Washington. So, I'm certainly not going to play two Jets position players, though. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to lean on Hall.
Give me the entire Jets take you got here, Bobby. I know you're talking about Simeon before. I assume Wilson's the most likely pairing for him. Breece Hall as well. I genuinely don't know what to do with the Jets today, but I think I'm going to be under the field as a general thought, which probably shouldn't scare me, but like I'm scared how terrible Washington is defensively.
Yeah, so I prefer Breece Hall to Garrett Wilson. I think he's very game script dependent. The industry take is that Simeon stinks. I know he stinks, but he was all right last year, like when he came in. So I think he's definitely better than what they've had. So I don't mind Simeon to Wilson. I wouldn't like Tim though. I would only play one Jet skill position player in my lineup or make a rule around just getting one of them. For me, it would be Breece though. Simeon's good for his price. You could stack him with Wilson if you want. I just think, he only got, the issue is Wilson didn't get any targets from Simeon last week. Neither did Breece. So it's not the greatest situation, but it's just like a pricing thing. If you want to do something different, I would much prefer like Flacco as a pay down quarterback over Simeon. I just wanted to throw him in there because I think for large field stuff, he's in play.
Mabs is saying lock button Roshan.
That's a Bobby. Wow. That's a Bobby question.
Yeah, I feel like Bobby has touted him once or twice.
I did tout Roshan on the wrong slate. Yeah,
it's a leverage play, dude. If you want to do,
what about today? What about today though? He's a legit play.
I think both those running backs are in play. Foreman, Roshan. I think I would prefer Foreman just because of the game script. Possibly get a touchdown or two. Can you play him with Fields? Is that something that you can do? I don't think so. I think it'd be good negative leverage off Fields if you wanted to get him in a lineup. He's super cheap. I doubt anyone plays him.
I don't think Foreman's playing today, Bobby. I'm pretty sure Foreman's out.
Foreman's out, Bobby.
He's out.
I don't know if you're thinking of Herbert or not.
It would be then I would like Roshan, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I wasn't joking. Like, if Fields is going to be popular, it's going to be popularly paired with Moore. That's one way to be different. You can just see people tilting their faces off if Roshan sneaks in and steals a couple of touchdowns, opposed to Fields running him in, that kind of thing. Way to be different. We were talking about Fields, right? Fields pair with Moore, ran back with McBride. That is like super, super obvious for tournaments, Tim. I feel like that's going to be really popular, like in single entry stuff. Really popular, you know. Yes. What I mean? It's popular as things can be as far as like quarterback, receiver, run back combinations and single entry stuff. Is that a bad idea? Or like if you're making that as a start of your build, what do I have to do? Like, it's not hard to be different in other positions, right? You could still start with that base if you want to. But like, how aware of you if you're making that as your base? You understand? How much are you going out of your way to be a little bit different on the other pieces? If you start with Fields, Moore, McBride.
Yeah, if you go Fields, Moore, McBride, I might add in Mooney to make it a Fields double. And then you're going to have to get off of guys like Chandler, guys like Breece Hall, go down to guys like possibly like a Hubbard, an Aaron Jones, get off of some of this running back chalk. Because if you start off with Fields, Moore, McBride, that's a lot of aggregate ownership. You probably shouldn't play Jefferson in that lineup, right? Like, so
yeah.
I'm certainly not telling people they can't go Fields, Moore, McBride, but that's one of the reasons why in single entry I'm trying to get away from Fields, because I think that's just because the contests I play are all like the single entry stuff. So a lot of people are going to go that way, and I'm just looking for different ways to, get away from that chalk that I think is going to get super steamed in single entry.
Our ownership is for the large field stuff, and the good stuff. The really good pieces tend to elevate, tend to rise in single entry. Certainly in cash, you're not really worried about that. Cash, you just want to build the best possible lineup. You don't really care what ownership happens to be. But yeah, that's something I'm kind of aware of as well too. Bobby, Nick wants to know Godwin or Garrett Wilson. We saw Godwin. Speaking of rising, yeah, he was spectacular last week. Kind of has been clearly, second guy behind Evans this season. He's back-to-back weeks now with the double-digit targets for Godwin, and they actually showed up last week, 150 yards or so, something like that. How do we feel about Godwin versus Wilson in the old in the Hoover, in the vacuum?
I think it would be Wilson for me. I prefer Mike Evans to Godwin. I know Godwin's really, these last 2 weeks, has seen a tremendous target share in that Tampa Bay offense. I just don't know like how long that lasts. I think they want to get Evans going. Evans had seen AJ Terrell versus Atlanta. There were some matchup situations. I would prefer Evans, and I think in terms of that question, Wilson and Godwin, I think Wilson just has the better matchup. Just play Wilson. Wilson makes more sense.
Jeff says, am I overthinking Tajay Spears getting enough run today? I bet him over his rushing total, but here's the problem. His rushing total was like 26. So, it's not a big number. I don't know if it's changed since then, but give or take, it was 26. We saw, despite it being DeHember, that Derrick Henry having a historically, deplorable day, as far as carries, as far as touches, as far as yards, 4 catches for 1 yard and like 16 carries for like 9 yards. Just absolutely brutal last week. Can he bounce back? Sure, I suppose. Spears is much more the future than Henry happens to be. If they're behind, I like Spears more, but they're actually, they're slight dogs here versus Seattle, but it should be a close game. You got to take on this, Bobby, Henry and Spears. I think I'm mostly just ignoring it. If one of them somehow rises and gets like a 99th percentile outcome, so be it. But I don't think I'm on either one. I don't think it's on a lineup, so I'm probably not landing on either.
There's a back I do like in this game, but it's neither Spears or Henry. It's Kenneth Walker. Like we've seen what Kenneth Walker did in the Island game the other night. Tennessee has some defensive line issues. I think Walker is a very, very good play, especially in tournaments today. But for Spears and Henry, like I'd prefer Spears. I'm not playing Henry at this point. Like I just think he's dust. I think Spears is the future. I just don't know what kind of usage they're going to give him, and it's tough to really speculate.
He also doesn't seem like a guy that's gonna run in the trenches and have like 20 carries or so. He's kind of the future, but he's also not a guy that's going to be a workhorse, right? But maybe he gets 15 touches or so on the best possible.
So I don't know how I feel about that, because I see Chase Brown. What do we think Chase Brown is in Cincy? I think that's a pretty good comp, and I think that might be how they're going to utilize. Like I don't think for larger field stuff you want to play Spears. Like
is Spears bigger than I think he is? I think he's kind of a smaller back. Am I wrong to say that?
Yeah, I think he's a small. He's been like a scout. He got a. Yeah, he's on the smaller side. He's definitely not Derrick Henry or a Deontay Foreman or one of these guys that is going to pound it. But I do think that he can be utilized in today's NFL with a higher workload week to week. Maybe I'm wrong.
He's 5'10", 201.
Bigger than I thought he was.
Best comp is Myles Gaskin.
Does that make you more or less excited? He's come to Myles Gaskin.
I'm not that excited. I'm not that excited.
I was talking about in terms of like this context of this draft class.
You analyze the whole. You're like Mo Kiper over there. You analyze the whole draft.
No, I don't. No, I don't. All right, Dean. I see where you're going with this. I'm just saying. I think he's a good. I don't hate him. I get why he asked the question. Like it's a good question.
Yeah. I'm just having fun.
Yeah, Spears is much better than Gaskin, by the way. I like this guy, Eugene.
Eugene's asking Todd Chandler or Zeke, and Bobby. I don't know if you know this, but Zeke is not on the main slate. He's playing in the night slate. He's on the Patriots, and he's playing in the showdown slate versus Denver. I know this is not pertinent to our conversation, but we didn't get caught up here. I guess probably a season-long question, and I think the answer is I think the answer is Ty Chandler. I think the answer is Ty Chandler.
I think it's Ty Chandler. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just in my fantasy league, bro. There you go. I didn't think it was like he's playing the all-day slate or something like that. By the way, Shannon had an interesting thought, right? We're talking about Tim. How do we get different with Fields and more? Just play, Fields more McBride. Play Kyler. How about that?
Right.
Kyler could beat Fields.
I saw that comment, and that was a very, very, very good comment by Shannon. Yep. Kyler rates out really
Nobody's
well
playing
today.
him.
And nobody's going to play him. Yeah, I think that's a really, really good take. We have him as our QB4, and we have him at 3% ownership. So at 6,400, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Chicago's defense has been very good since Sweat got. Is it Sweat? Who's
I
the guy?
know. Yeah, that is the
who
guy.
And it's some guy from Washington.
Yeah,
That's my concern too. That like Murray just gets. I like the Bears defense more than I like Kyler Murray, which also makes me think that like maybe Fields won't get pushed as much as I want him to get pushed. I could see the Bears win this game like 23-7, essentially. Which is my concern about going too hard on Fields and Moore. And maybe they just control the game defensively on the ground. The Bears the ball for like 35 minutes or so. No Hollywood Brown for that Arizona side. Their receiving core is really, we're speaking of size as far as running backs, Bobby, but like Wilson, Moore, Dortch, Pascal. I mean, they got, McBride is a big dude, an incredible target, getting 30% of target share. And there's a reason why, because, he stands out amongst everybody else in that Arizona side. I could just see the Bears. I like the Bears as like as a side, as far as like gambling. I bet the Bears earlier this week against Arizona. I think they win this game by more than 3 or 4, whatever the number happened to be when I bet it.
And there's your mush.
There it is. Yeah, you know what?
I was gonna say now I can't bet that now. So there you go.
Was that on your list? Was that something you were considering? Now
I was considering it. Now it's crossed off immediately.
Who's Alex Caruso on for? Do we know?
Take the other side. He's more like a player prop guy. I think. I don't think he's a side prop guy. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, you get in the algorithm better when you start trashing players, I suppose.
He's a reverse Ben the Better.
Supposedly, Ben the Better is like a legit sharp guy that is intentionally making bad picks.
For sure,
that's what I've heard. Yeah. Okay, so we haven't really talked about the elite receivers. Let's talk about that. I guess before we do that, Mr. Richards asking about Drake London. Good spot for Drake. How do we feel about Drake London today, Bobby? Do we like the Drake? Do we love the Drake? Are we indifferent about the Drake?
Like most of the industry, indifferent. Better home road splits. They're at home. But now he goes from Ritter to Heineke. I think the industry is off him. And for that reason, like if I was playing 150, I'd probably be a little bit over. That's my thought process on Ritter.
Tim, if you got anything, by all means, share. It's on London specifically, but we talked about cheap receivers. We haven't talked a ton about the spend ups. Lamb is getting 7-8%, Tyreek 13%. Jefferson very clearly, like amongst the big spends, will be the most popular. You're getting a discounted version of Justin Jefferson in a positive match of Detroit. How you get to him is via the air. They're likely going to. I think they're small dogs there against Detroit. In the dome as well, assuming he doesn't get hurt or re-injure, whatever, he looks spectacular. 8-1 is just at least 1K too cheap when you're getting prime Jefferson. I'm on Roth on the other side of the game. Not a lot of ownership, 7%. And the other big, other popular guy amongst the big spends is DJ Moore at 23%. Up top there, what are we doing there, Tim? Are we avoiding that entire area? Are you in cash? You're going to get the Jefferson for sure. But otherwise, how are you handling the premier receivers this week?
Yeah, I don't think I can go any higher than Jefferson in cash, just the way that lineup construction is today. Obviously, I mean, can't say anything bad about Tyreek or CD. You're going to have to punt a couple positions to get to them. But yeah, obviously for large field, I would get to them. I would definitely get overweight on CD at 7.5% ownership. It wouldn't be that hard to do. But yeah, I just really like this mid range, like the 6K range of DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson. If you're not playing Breece Hall, even guys like DK Metcalf at 67. I really like that range. So I'm not immediately pouncing on these high end wide receivers other than JJ and cash. So they're obviously great, but I think that construction today is a little bit different.
Bobby, your thoughts as far as the big spend ups, the elite receivers?
Yeah, it'd probably be Jefferson. Same thought process as Tim. Like CD is someone who'd probably be my favorite of Tyreek and Hill, but as I'm going down, like I want to live in that mid-range. Basically the same analysis Tim gave. DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson, Ridley. Some we haven't talked about, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's like 1,000. He's like below CD, in between Jefferson and CD. I think he's fine. I think he falls behind a lot of these guys for me, though. I just think I'd rather Laporta or JMO from that game, and just go down to DJ Moore's, Calvin Ridley's. But yeah, I liked Amon-Ra earlier in the week. I wrote him up. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have that's pretty much, I feel like it could. DJ Moore is like my favorite play. So I'm going to be playing a lot of him, which is going to eliminate me from getting to a lot of these other guys.
Nick in chat saying St. Brown, my favorite and a must win. He's putting must win in quotes. I'm not sure why he's saying must win, unless Detroit's like basically guaranteed. I don't want to say guaranteed to win the division, but if you pull up the New York Times playoff puzzle picture as far as projections, 99% chance of making the playoffs, 96% chance of winning the division, 1% chance of getting a first round bye. So like, I don't understand why he's saying that.
Maybe he's a Lions fan. Maybe it's a must-win fan.
Well, yeah, but their path is basically it's pretty clear where they're going, and where they're going to just hit the sim button to get to the playoff spot. They're making the playoffs to win the division, almost definitely, barring some extreme goofiness. But you're saying as a Lions fan, they just like they can't believe it's possible. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, they can't lose.
Nick's talking about clinching it, but like if they don't clinch it today, they'll clinch it next week or the next week. They're going to fall into clinching it. Basically, is the point I'm making. It doesn't have to happen today. Let's see. Luis is asking about, how do we feel about Pierce replacing Pittman? We talked about that earlier. It might be a collection of guys, and maybe none of them are like worth having. They're all like, they do different degrees of okay, right? Because we talk about DJ Montgomery, Fernie might get worked in. They have 9 different tight ends. Downs like should be the guy. I'm just concerned. Does anyone share my concerns on Downs? Just like how the production's been down of late, and
I am.
Yeah,
I think
I just don't think
that's
he's
what I
think.
think.
Like I personally like Pierce the most. Pierce or Montgomery. I don't know. I don't think Downs is going to be the guy, or you just play JT, right?
TJ in chat is touting DJ Montgomery. He's saying he's going to replace Pittman. As far as the role, I don't think he means he's going to duplicate his like precise stats, but certainly not.
We already talked about DJ Montgomery, 63% of the snaps, 4 targets last week. Like he's viable for cash if you want to go that route. I still think getting to Wicks is a better play.
Yeah, well, you're saving $1,000 for Montgomery, but yeah, you're right. Wicks, assuming Reed doesn't play, but I think you guys have opened me up, and TJ as well, as far as the Montgomery being another cheapie I should consider. Because I was thinking Downs earlier. I was thinking Downs yesterday, and Pierce is fine, as Tim is saying. I don't Fernie. We're not going to go there. If it's Fernie, so be it. Whatever. Yeah, I know. I think my favorite cheapie happens to be Jameson Williams there for Detroit. Tight ends. We kind of touched on tight ends. Bobby, how you handling that? They're talking about in chat as far as the revenge for TJ Hockenson. They're running it back. This is revenge part 2, I believe. I don't recall how he did the first game versus Detroit earlier in the year. Both tight ends in that game, Laporta, Hockenson, really, really good. And Juku's been spectacular. Flacco's throwing the ball 40 plus times. Tight ends are pretty good today. If you're desperate to save salary, I think Kraft looks okay, especially if we lose Reed. What's our official tight end take here, Bobby? You taking a stand, or it's just like whatever your quarterback happens to be? What's the rules when it comes to tight ends today?
Yeah, it feels like Hockenson kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So I think he's good leverage if you want to get there. I don't know how much I'll have of him because I think there are a lot of really strong tight end plays. Trey McBride as the chalk, I think he's fantastic. Evan Ingram, just seeing a ton of red zone targets now that we're kind of seeing basically early in the season, like positive regression in terms of him getting targets in the red zone and having touchdown opportunities. David Njoku, who's getting peppered by Flacco week in and week out. Like, these are all guys I'm going to definitely have in my player pool. Jake Ferguson as my second. He'd probably be my second favorite Dallas receiver. Tucker Kraft, I think, opens up now that we're basically siding on the side that Jaden Reed's not going to play. Still up in the air, but if he doesn't play, I think Kraft is more in play in that scenario. And then Sam Laporta, I think he's the most interesting for tournaments just because of his ceiling for me. So at 6'4", people aren't going to spend that price with everyone in the mid tier, and I think he's differentiated if you can get up to him. I like him a good bit.
Not just his ceiling, but Laporta currently projected for 4% ownership on DK. Give it a refresh. We just got a new batch of ownership 4 minutes ago on the lineup HQ. McBride most popular at 19%, then Njoku at 13%, Kmet at 12%. Kmet mostly due to Fields' popularity, I would imagine. Just kind of the trickle-down effect. Ingram at 10%, Kraft at 9%, Ferguson 8%. It's pretty clustered. Pitts at 7%. Bobby, you agree with that? We have Jonnu at 2% and Pitts at 7%. I feel like people will be, open to, if you're running Heineke stuff, just fully punt with Jonnu at 2.9.
I would do fully punt, yeah. And there's too much risk with Pitts. Like, every week, is he going to get the targets? Is he not? Jonnu's there. He's also getting up in the price range of all these other guys that are pretty priced up that we want to play. I just think it's fully punt with Jonnu.
What do you got, Tim, as far as tight end takes? And I'm curious. I think I asked Bobby earlier. Are you open to double tight ends? I don't think it's the worst idea.
I definitely am open to double tight end today. I'm also open to double wide receiver. I think flex is really tough today on DK. I mean, it's really, really like, I don't even know if I'm going to play 3 RBs in cash, to be honest with you. It's pretty tough to decide what to do at flex. I think Cole Kmet's pretty interesting. Evan Ingram, I absolutely love at 5,400 as he's getting like half the ownership as McBride. He's a little bit cheaper. I already said how much I like Lawrence, so I loved getting to Evan Ingram. And Njoku is a great play. Ferguson, obviously very strong at 4,900. But like I said earlier, I don't think I'd go any lower than maybe Chig, but probably I wouldn't even go any lower than even Cade, to be honest with you. So it's got to be 1 or 2 of these guys that are like in this like 45 to 58 range, and then you got Laporta there sitting there at 4% ownership in this amazing spot in a dome in a great game environment. Like Bobby said, he could certainly separate himself from the rest of the field, so he's a fantastic GPP play. But yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty strong position at the high end today.
Jack can't believe it. He's only going to be 4% on. He might get like up to 6 or 7 or 8. I don't think he's going to get double digits, Laporta, just because of salary constraints. Question for you, Bobby, for let's see, mid-tier cheapy receiver. Joe wants to know, you like Elijah Moore or Pierce? Who do you prefer amongst those two?
Probably Pierce, I guess. I don't really have much conviction around either. Like,
Tim, you got anything? You have a conviction
between Moore and Pierce?
Yeah,
I would go Pierce.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're depending on your quarterback, right? If that's an easy way,
yeah, right,
doing it that way. But I guess you're assuming you're not having Minshew or something like that,
right? If it's just a one-off, I prefer Pierce.
Bobby, we almost neglected. The people are clamoring in chat. They want to know, your defensive segment. You bring it every single week. You put your hand in the dirt. You comb through all the defensive linemen, all the cornerback, wide receiver matchups. What are we seeing? What are the outliers? What kind of defenses are we focusing on today?
Yeah, it looks like Jets are going to be the chalk. I think a nice pivot is the Bucs, just to get off them. They're still going to have ownership, but I think they might be the better play in the scenario. And yeah, one of them that I think is pretty sneaky is Minnesota at 2.5. It allows you to differentiate Chandler, who's obviously a really good play. We know what Goff's home road splits are. We've heard of the baby hands narrative and all that stuff. And Minnesota's going to bring pressure, and Goff struggles with pressure, and Minnesota blitzes at a very high clip. So at 2-5, I really like the Minnesota Vikings defense.
Bobby, what's like the one really, really chalk play, the most popular play that you're going to be the most under on? Your biggest stand against chalk? Who is it?
It's probably going to be Jefferson, I'd have to say.
Yeah. You're not Xing him out fully, or you are?
No,
Yeah. Okay. But he'll be well under the field.
Who do you think you're going to be most overweight on and at wide receiver, Bobby, at the high end?
Probably Cooper or Moore, I think. Oh, on the high end, like it would be Lamb over Tyreek on the high end for me.
Yeah. See some Flacco stacks in your future. Tim, how about yourself? What are you looking at? You stand both ways. Like you're well, whatever you're against the field with one player. And I know you only make like 1 or 2 or 3 lineups, whatever it is, but still you're making stands, right? One that you're like, going to kind of be the difference maker for better or worse. That you have them and the field doesn't, and the other side as well, like a player that's going to be pretty popular that you're likely not going to be on. Who's that?
I think Justin Fields is going to be my stand on not having. I think that's a pretty big stand, especially in the contests that I play in. So I think Fields is my fade. I'm not sure who my low own play is that the field is not going to get to. Aaron Jones is still under 10%. I'm probably going to play him in one of my 3 lineups. So that is one at least somewhat contrarian play. I'm considering Sam Laporta as a pivot off of McBride, or play both of them. So I mean he's very, very low owned, a play that I absolutely love.
Talk me into Aaron Jones. I don't want to play him. I like Taylor more. I like White more. I'm okay with Bijan. I'm kind of indifferent about Brees. I think Singletary's playable. I don't really have him as high as I guess you do. I guess the field's not that high in Jones either. But what's the sales pitch on Aaron Jones? Dylan back today for what it's worth, or available today. Expected to be.
Dylan back, but I mean, facing this Carolina defense, we know that Aaron Jones can catch passes as well. He's only 6,400. Gets you off of quite a bit of ownership. So I just really like attacking this Carolina D. Say Reed, whether Reed is in or out, Wicks is going to be pretty popular. And so maybe you fade him and you play Aaron Jones instead. And I think that's a good way of getting a little bit of leverage off of, and getting exposure to a defense that I want to attack.
TJ is jumping in. He said he joined late. Why are you still high on Chandler with Madison expected back? The report was Pellisario was basically saying Madison expected to be available, but also expected not to be 100%. And the expectation is that Chandler is going to have, a big chunk of that backfield. Is that kind of where you're at, Tim? If you like Chandler, play Chandler. I'm not worrying about Madison. I mean, they're playing him or not, and it has nothing to do with Madison at all.
Yeah, we've actually brought down Madison's projections since the beginning of the show. So he's got even fewer rushing attempts, fewer rushing yards than when we started. So
like two rushing attempts, basically.
Yeah. Yep. So say he gets 4 or 5, Chandler's still getting the absolute lion's share of this work. So I'm not worried about Madison at all.
We should have Beimfohr and SquirrelPatrol coming in momentarily. Final GPP takes as we do the crossover. Bobby, do you have a player you want to give a stand on? A player that's going to break the slate? A player you're absolutely going to want to have well more than the field? The guy that you would tilt on, 3 seconds into the slate when they break it, but or even a stack. However ambitious you want to be with this, feel free to fire off a bold take for me.
Yeah, we didn't talk about him much, but I like Bijan Robinson a good bit in the spot. He's probably going to be a guy I'm significantly overweight on, so I'm going to go Bijan.
Yeah, I know Arthur. Everybody hates Arthur in the DFS space and the fantasy space. catching a lot of flack last week for Bijan getting very little usage. I think he did fumble for what it's worth, but that's such an archaic. Oh, you fumbled. Now you can never play football ever again until next week. Maybe, and then you fumble again.
Never let him coach in the league again for takes when they do that stuff. Just so ridiculous.
It's really one of the dumber things that like coaches, some still do. Atlanta desperate. They're hanging by a thread as far as their playoff chances. 14% technically. I guess they're still mathematically alive, but I assume they got to win out. I don't hate that take, and a lot of people are just sort of done with Bijan. So maybe, just maybe, he gets a few extra touches, and he doesn't even necessarily need them because he's electric. He can get it done like in 15 or 16 or 17 if he gets that many. How about yourself, Tim? What do you got? Give me your bold take. Who's breaking the slate? Who's taking the money down today?
Who's breaking the slate? I'm gonna go Aaron Jones, and I'm also gonna say Justin Fields is a pretty big bust.
Yeah. We have Ebeimfohr. We have SquirrelPatrol. I feel like just knowing Squirrel and how he thinks, I feel like Squirrel's going to talk a lot of Dolphins because people are kind of ignoring them. And I'm just curious, and I don't, not to force your conversation, but if you guys have a thought on that total jumping, 51.5 to start the week. Now it's down to 48 or so. Two offensive lines that are not spectacular, two pretty good defenses. I don't know, Ebeimfohr, did you care about such things? I don't know if a Squirrel does, but I'm curious to get your take on it. Give us a little tease of that, and then we'll segue out of here. But welcome. Happy Sunday. Merry Christmas.
Yes, of course. Merry Christmas to you guys. Well, first, Dean, the total clearly makes no sense. I don't know if you know, both of these teams average more than 30 points per game. So 48, the math, doesn't add up. That's 60 total points if they both hit their averages. So 48 doesn't make a lot of sense. But no, I'm definitely one of the resident kind of defense stands, if you will. I've been kind of really on the Dolphins defense is really good thing. Ultimately, since Jalen Ramsey got back, but they've had a couple other guys get healthy too. And I believe in a lot of that kind of stuff, right? We've seen it with the Ravens as an example. Neither of those two teams, Cowboys, Dolphins, are quite the same, but where the Ravens have an explosive offense. Lamar Jackson's amazing, but we haven't seen them really get pushed, right? The Eagles last year. How many times did we come on the show hopefully Jalen Hurts throws a pass in the second half, And the Ravens have been a little bit like that. The Dolphins haven't quite been like that, right? They're still really explosive and scoring a bunch of points, but Tua's sat out a lot of fourth quarters. And it's not just because they're scoring points, it's because the defense is really good too. So obviously that's mitigated a little bit because both offenses are going to score here today. So I do like that game. And I'm actually also interested in getting Squirrel's take because it's another one of those awesome, fun games. But how the hell do you fit all those guys into a lineup in the salary cap game?
Yeah. We're not doing the holiday headgear thing. I thought we were all going to show up. All right, yeah. So Miami and Dallas. So I like playmakers. I kind of doesn't bother me that the line has gone down a little bit. I think if anything, I'm seeing almost no ownership on that game. I'm not necessarily looking at ownership projections. When I start taking projections, start running optimal lineups and optimal stacks, and optimal game stacks, that game doesn't show up, which I think is great. Because that is some of the most talented playmakers in the NFL. And so what I'm interested in even more than a line is Tyreek Hill just running down the field from the 20-yard line, running down 80 yards, puts up points for him, for his quarterback, and turns the ball back over to the other team. So I think the explosive potential for that game is still there. Maybe the immediate outcome is down. I don't know why. But yeah, and it's expensive to get in. So I think you do have to play some Trevor Siemian, Garrett Wilson. But then you're putting in
oh baby, Now we're talking.
That was the conversation an hour and a half previous that we talked about amongst other things. But we will yield. By the way, I do like the take, Eric, you kind of referenced. I always like I'm afraid this team's going to score too many points, so I can't roster these players take. I always enjoy that one. They're going to score too much. It's a huge problem.
Wait till next week.
Right.
The 49ers play the Commanders next week. That will be the discussion all week. How are they going to pull their starters? If they score 50, do I care when they come, when they score the points?
How do they get to 40 is the question. All right. Myself and Bobby and Tim, we do appreciate you watching the first portion. I'm going to go ahead and yield. SquirrelPatrol, Ebeimfohr, no reason to go anywhere else. Still 2 hours of nonstop NFL DFS conversation Taking y'all straight up the lock. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. Erik, take it away.
As always, shout out to the People Show, Dean, Bobby, and Tim, the best. We got Squirrel very festive. I have clearly shamed him into not wearing his festive headgear.
It was ringing. They're bells. Their actual bells are like ringing in my ear.
That is absolutely hilarious. But here we are, of course. Thank you for joining us. GPP Final Takes, one of the last of the year. We're closing in on the end. We'll see what happens in the playoffs, but excited to get into this Christmas Eve slate here with you. Hopefully everybody's having happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all of that. And hopefully the games so far, if you're in my world, in the best ball streets, or you have your season-long teams, hopefully these first couple games have been treating you well. Hopefully some George Pickens was in your life, because, wow, that was unexpected and out of nowhere, huge game from him last night. Go ahead. It
was in my article. RotoGrinders retweeted. As soon as he caught that 86-yard touchdown, I'm like, oh. We're going to retweet that section of the article. Which is
I believe, yeah, that's perfect. I believe I tagged him and Gabe. See, it's Martin. You got to martingale the big play, guys. That's what you got to learn in DFS. It's not really about the analysis. We can get our hand in the dirt all we want. Just play Gabe every week and lose on the zeros, and then you get the 100-yard game like you got last night. And George Pickens is kind of a Kmart version of Gabe Davis, if you will. Just wait for the big games. But it was a great spot, and I think we can find some of those here on this slate. We'll talk, of course, some more about the Dolphins game, but I think there's some interesting angles, like a little bit similar to that, where people are maybe a little bit afraid to dive into that right. George Pickens hasn't exploded, but the talent is there, the matchup was there, but nobody really wanted to dive in, even on a 2-game slate, right? People didn't want to dive in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the things I say is they do not take more money from you. Yeah, you play those like I said, you play playmakers. And guys who have the talent to run down the field 86 yards with a touchdown, keep playing them, because they're not going to do if they did it every week, they would be Tyreek Hill and they'd be $10,000, right? But George Pickens is $5,000 or $4,000 something, because he hasn't done it in a while, because it's Pittsburgh Steelers, and then now they're on Mason Rudolph as their quarterback, and everybody's off the team, in terms of ownership, because it's got a 36-point total. But I still want that guy that can catch the ball at the 14-yard line, and run 86 yards for a touchdown. Because that's what starts to elevate not just him, his quarterback, the game environment. So, and when it doesn't hit, there's going to be a lot of stuff that doesn't hit. That's going to be chalk. So might as well play the guy that can run the 86 yards for the touchdown.
Right. Not to totally derail or not to say negative things about, this specific player, because I think he's really fun and a good player. But we've talked a lot in the past about the Wan'Dale Robinson types, right? Where it's he's actually a very good player, but there is no realm in which he does what George Pickens did last night, right? It doesn't exist. That's not in his range of outcomes. It's not the kind of player he is. It's not the kind of offense he's on, etc. And so, like you said, those kind of guys, I don't know that we necessarily have many of those as, popular plays today, but that's the difference. When you watch George Pickens do that, and then you go watch some guys like that I like some of these guys just fine on certain slates or at certain prices or whatever, right? But Wan'Dale Robinson, Greg Dortch, even old school Keenan Allen, maybe not new school Keenan Allen, but old school Keenan Allen, some of those guys, it's just a little bit of a different thing. And I think today in particular, as we start to segue into here this week 16 slate, we have a smaller slate for, I'm sure everybody noticed, but the fact that there's multiple games tomorrow, and there were multiple games yesterday, and there was Thursday Night Football. We, even without buys, we have a little bit of a smaller slate. We have very limited games that I would call, right. The reason why the whole the segue from the People Show right before us was about Dolphins Cowboys was because there aren't a lot of games that you look at here this week and you're just like, Yahtzee. Okay, this one, this is the Coors Field. This is this game that we just have to load up on, or even the pricing just absolutely dictates that we have to do it. So I think I'm pretty darn interested to have this conversation today, because I think there's a lot of ways we can go. If you have not hung out with us before on GPP Final Takes, quickly, we will not necessarily go game by game. We will not necessarily go position by position. We're going to try to hit, of course, the tournament final takes, the like most relevant items for tournaments, right? That could be a game, that could be an injury, that could be a certain player. It could be that Dolphins, Cowboys thing. It kind of is a little bit different from slate to slate, but we'll try to cover all of those most pertinent items. And of course, the most important thing, if you have a question, anything at all, right? FanDuel specific, DraftKings specific, take on a player, take on a game. We're not going to be so much cash game oriented. We will try to answer any cash game questions that you have, but drop it in the chat. The goal is to try to hit as many of your questions. That's what we're here to do. Answer your questions. So drop them in there and we will try to hit them. As usual, Squirrel, we try to like what's a high level kind of, give the people an overview at a macro level, how you're thinking about this slate. I don't have an awesome one for this slate. So I was curious what you were thinking, like when you open up Lineup HQ or you're the person's at home sitting on their phone about to hand build a lineup. What's like the thing that you're like, all right, I got to think about this first for this slate?
Sure. So I think you actually summed up the week pretty well. And I think like the emotions that you're letting out about the slate, I think are actually like pretty valid, that there's just not a lot that jumps off the page, right? No Courts Field thing, but like ownership always concentrates, right? Like when you hit that optimize button, like, and you're getting like Justin Fields or, whatever, as the quarterback, like so many people are going to use that as the cash game quarterback. So many people are just going to take that cash game lineup and enter into a tournament or single entry tournament. If you do anything to get different, because like that's a fine spot. Like I have nothing against Justin Fields. It was tough. Like I was writing the Optimal Stacks article, and like Justin Fields is a chalk, and I really just don't like him as a chalk quarterback. But I like him as a DFS play, right? I love like when nobody's talking about Justin Fields, like Fields can run, is a playmaker, right? He can run down the field with the ball, and he's getting those rushing points as a quarterback that are so valuable. But like when he's chalk, like he's not always going to be running down the field. For 80 yards for a touchdown, right? So like I think he's going to be played at a much higher rate than he can really hit. And like I said, like why not just like play Kyler Murray? Like Kyler Murray is almost the same statistical player. He's going to have much lower ownership. He's much cheaper. Justin Fields is now one of the most expensive quarterbacks on the slate. And that same kind of thought process, you can just take it down to every position, from running back to wide receiver to defense. Like, I think we're going to see some high ownership on the defenses. Like people never think about that. I was just at the FanDuel live final last week. That's why I was not on the show. Like flip over the cards. It's a football live final. The Carolina defense is like more than 40% owned, just because it was that was the good value defense. People don't think about the idea that like I just, if I'm going to be playing a chalkier game stack, I can just play a different defense, right? Like then the field is going to play. I think that like the Jets will be extremely popular on DraftKings this week, probably like Seattle on FanDuel. So like if you're playing that like kind of chalkier Justin Fields lineup, especially like on FanDuel, like just get different. Like just don't play the the chalk defense, right? And vice versa. And then if you are playing like a more off the board quarterback, then you can play the chalkier defense and so on. So I think like there's just nothing that stands out on this slate that much, but there is going to be stuff that sees like outsized ownership, and that's just what we want to get away from.
Yeah, that is so true. I love that summary, because you do have slates a lot of the times. If you've been hanging out with us over the course of the season, you've seen the slates where we're like, look, I don't care. Now we'll talk about this guy, right? But Colts running backs have been a funny one the course of this year. It's like almost every week we have to deal with a chalk Colts running back. And again, today we're definitely gonna have to talk about Jonathan Taylor. But like Zach Moss has failed actually in multiple chalky spots, and me in particular, as more of a single entry, 3-entry max, less lineups type player, I was just like, look, this is too good. 5,600 Zach Moss or whatever against in an amazing spot, blah, 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 line it all up. I can do something else he was such a standout play above the rest. Today, I have some guys that I really like. Some of them are popular, some of them are not, but none of, like, if you said, what is objectively the difference between Breece Hall and Chuba Hubbard? Right. I'm just throwing out two guys. Like, what is like really the difference? Both good matchups, both pretty good players, right? So they fit your, like, could Breece Hall rip one off? Absolutely. Could Chuba? Yeah, absolutely. Are they on good teams? Nope. Are they, could you see them failing? Yep, absolutely. And so it's like, I think there's a lot of that, right? There's like, I like Falcons again today. the Falcons are in a pretty good spot. Could I see every single Falcon failing yet again for the 14th time this year? Yes, of course I could. And so, but that's the thing, right? We all want the Cowboys and Dolphins, and we'll talk about maybe how to get them into your lineups today, but it's a salary cap game, and I can't just play Tyreek and CD and Dak and whatever, because I don't have any money left. And so I think these are some of the fun slates where, like you said, the ownership is always going to condense, but like the top owned running back is not objectively that much different than the sixth highest owned running back. And so how do we wade through that in our lineups is the most important part, for sure. Let's talk through really, really quickly. In 17 minutes, we will be getting the official injury, actives and inactives for the first. Oh, Jimmy Butler didn't practice today. That's the first thing that's up on my screen. Shocker. So I'm going to run down what the news that we have so far. Nico Collins officially will play today. No limitations. So if you're interested in Nico, tough spot, of course, for Nico, but not going to be on any snap count or anything like that. Donta Foreman, we will definitely be talking about that game in the afternoon. You mentioned Justin Fields already, DJ Moore, of course, but Donta Foreman is out for the Bears today. So we'll probably have to talk a little bit about those other Bears running backs, talk about a who the heck knows type of situation, but also a pretty good matchup. Cole Kmet for the Bears also is going to play. Alexander Mattison is going to play this week, but the report was they don't know exactly how healthy he is. Something to consider for Ty Chandler. Let me see. The Dolphins are optimistic Tyreek Hill will play. I hope that they're optimistic. He's like practiced all week, but I'm assuming Tyreek Hill is going to play. I'm trying to double check. There's so many. All right. So Zach Moss is out, of course, today. Christian Kirk is out. Zay Jones is out for Jacksonville. I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, Green Bay. We're waiting on Jaden Reed news. Christian Watson is doubtful, so we're assuming he's not going to play. I believe AJ Dillon is questionable, but expected to play if I'm remembering correctly. And that is mostly it. I think a very random one, but I did just want to point out because I'm interested mostly in the Seahawks side of things. For Tennessee, they are, of course, out of the playoff race now. Chig Okonkwo is questionable, and they picked all three of their tight ends on their roster are questionable to play today, which seems bad. But also Nick Westbrook-Akine was placed on IR. Not a huge deal, but it does, I think, the Titans open up something, maybe for some large field stuff. I probably missed some things here and there, but as you can tell, there's a lot. It's a lot of different injury stuff. Let's kind of start there. I mentioned Zach Moss being out, so I do want to talk about Jonathan Taylor. He's at a pretty good price on DraftKings, I think, both relative to this slate where there's not a lot to spend up on other than the Dolphins Cowboys guys, but also just like without Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor's pretty darn good. On FanDuel, it's a little bit, he is $9,000 on FanDuel, so it's a little bit more of a discussion. But let's start with that. We've been playing Zach Moss without JT all year. Are we playing JT without Zach Moss? And now, Michael Pittman out for the Indianapolis Colts as well. So, but let's start with the kind of Moss, JT, and maybe the Colts as a whole.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be under the field on Jonathan Taylor. He's pretty expensive, and that might be a little bit more of a FanDuel mindset. Like, as the most expensive running back, I'm not sure he's in the best spot. I don't know how much Michael Pittman being out helps him also. Just it's concerned maybe the entire offense just falls apart.
Yep,
we saw that in NBA. It is weird. Football, as we get into December, turns into NBA, right? With all total mass unit of injuries. And it is and it starts to be wow, we really don't know. This guy's an actual game time decision. We don't know until he gets out there. But we did have an NBA game. It was everybody was missing for Dallas. So everybody loads up on the Dallas Mavericks players. And they went out.
Woof, by the way. woof for the Mavericks on that one. Yeah. So yeah. But it's pretty relevant, right? There were still good play. I'm not saying Jaden Hardy and Tim Hardaway or Jonathan Taylor or Josh Downs or whatever, right? But I know Minshew is fine, but Anthony Richardson is gone. Michael Pittman is gone, right? They have some offensive line injuries. They're not that good of an offense as it stands, and you just start removing these key pieces. It's something to take into account, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and it's a concern because we always complain about Arthur Smith just running the ball for Atlanta because they're not passing. But what if they're just running the ball because they don't think Indianapolis can score, right? We're not afraid of the Colts without Michael Pittman. I don't know mean, I think Jonathan Taylor is obviously going to be the main running back. I'm just concerned that like there's also like that doesn't mean he's going to have to get every single carry because like Trey Sermon's there. They've got somebody else. I forget the third string running back on the Colts right now, but they still have a couple of other guys other than Jonathan Taylor as well. So it's
Tyler Goodson.
Yeah,
Goodson.
Yeah, I was trying to think back to like last Saturday because I think it was like Trey Sermon that got the initial carries. But yeah, it was Goodson and Sermon. So that's a concern as well. So like I'll be getting some Jonathan Taylor in like my 150 set. I don't think I'd rather. Given it like a lineup, given like a handful of lineups, I'd rather spend up on the wide receivers, I think, than the running backs.
I think that makes sense. Any interest in the? I think I know the answer given kind of how you framed the JT and Colts reference, but any interest in the Colts wide receivers? Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. I'll be honest with you. I watch a lot of college football. I'm a football junkie. I watch the crap teams. Right? Why have we talked about Jake Bobo and Andre Yoshivas and like all those losers on this show all year long? Is because I do like to follow a lot of that stuff. When DJ Montgomery came in for the Colts, I was like, did Tymont move and like change his name or something? Like, I don't know who DJ Montgomery is, but he's going to be out there, I guess, as a cheap guy. And they don't have a wide receiver above what I'm looking at DraftKings. Josh Downs is 5.5K, but they're all pretty affordable. Any interest in those guys?
Not really. Like I think in my like 20 lineup set, right? If you're playing like 20 max, kind of one of those like DraftKings contests, I think FanDuel has them as well. They're it's just at a price point I can't play. It's like at $2.22 or something, $2.22. But like I would have like a Gardner Minshew lineup where you're maybe doing like a DJ Montgomery, Josh Downs like double stack, and that's fine. And that's a good. Then you can like maybe run that back with like a Drake London, right? So then maybe that's a game that's opening up a little bit more, or Bijan, right? So I think a game stack of that game is good. I kind of prefer like the Taylor Heineke side, not to go all Falcons on you, but you know, I think like in a 20 lineup set, I think like one Gardner Minshew and maybe one or two Taylor Heineke's is good. I don't want to probably go beyond that. And like if I'm playing like 5-6 lineups, I probably don't want to go like a Colts stack, like a Gardner Minshew, DJ Montgomery, Josh Downs.
Yeah. I can't. It's hard to envision Gardner Minshew to DJ Montgomery winning us, millions of dollars. But a crazier thing to the only thing I would add to that, I don't have anything like crazy to add, is slates are very different in terms of like when we've talked about the Falcon stuff you mentioned. Shout out them benching Desmond Ridder, so I don't play him again. When Desmond Ridder's 4,800 and Drake London is 4,600 or whatever, and they're in a good spot, and they're not gonna, now London might be different, but they're not going to be super popular, and they give me access to things that I really, really, really want and can't necessarily. Right, I can get CMC and Tyreek and CeeDee Lamb all on the same team, and like there are a bunch of spend ups that I love. That may be something to consider today when we talk about strictly like if you want to put Tyreek and CeeDee in a lineup, you might look to one of these cheap stacks. But other than that, like the most expensive running back on DraftKings is Rachaad White at 7,400. Like there are no spend up running backs. They're the tight end. There's like a bunch of guys maybe interesting in the 5 to 6K range, but like it's not like you have to play them. Like no one is forcing you to play Trey McBride. You know what I mean? Like there are good plays, but there's nothing that's an absolute must. So it's just important to consider, like, I don't have to jam these 3K guys just because other people are out if the slate doesn't necessarily require it. I want to get to we got a little bit of a backlog of questions. Nick asked about Jayden Reed. Yeah, give it 10 minutes and we'll find out about Jayden Reed, but definitely important news. I'm kind of hoping he's in so we don't have to talk about the Green Bay wide receivers, but we will get there. I want to do this one first because we were just talking about that game and you mentioned, we joke about the Falcons, but I do think, the Colts are a pretty appealing spot for just about any opponent. Bijan is at a fine price. Drake London is at a reasonable price. I don't particularly love Kyle Pitts today, but I wouldn't like hate anyone that said they wanted to play Kyle Pitts. How do you feel about the Falcons side of that game? And then how would you answer SoCal's question? Like, how do you compare Brees to Bijan?
So I like Bijan better than Brees. I think he's a little bit more expensive, but I think it's justified. It's not like by a wide margin. So like if you don't have the extra couple $100 from Bijan, like then play Brees Hall. I think it's fine. Like don't like start moving around pieces of a lineup you like just to get like Brees Hall over Bijan Robinson. I think the Falcons might be a little bit overowned in general. Like I don't mind getting to them again. Like I said, like in a 20 lineup set, like one or two like Taylor Heineke, Falcons stacks I think seems appropriate. I think that like Drake London is going to start showing up as like a more like highly owned piece. I think on DraftKings. He's only 5,100. I mean, and he does like fall back into that like playmaker, set, right? Like that mindset that you can play a guy like that, and he is a guy that can like catch the ball, run down the field. It just concerns me that he might be more highly owned than his chances of hitting there. Like what you want is like the guy with the Gabe Davis, the George Pickens after guy. Gets a couple of 0-4s, and then shows up and gets the 100 and whatever yards receiving. Worried like Drake London's going to be a little bit more highly owned just because we are struggling a little bit for value on this slate. And like 5,100, he's not really a value piece, but he's going to show up as a good point per dollar play.
Mm-hmm. I think that makes a ton of sense. I guys, I love you. I promise you, I see the Bears running back questions. We're going to get to it. It's a very important discussion. I promise you, we'll get to it. I'm trying to wade through a couple of other things. I don't know what Spice Girls reference I mentioned. Clearly, I just naturally say Spice Girls quotes, I guess, in my monologues, but. Whatever. There are worse things.
Tell me what you want.
I guess.
What you really I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think I said if you want to be my lover.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I just say things. Henry asks, I want to. DeAndre Swift is not on this slate. I don't believe. But Ty Chandler is another. I kind of want to talk through all these running backs. That's why I mentioned the Bears thing. We'll get to it next, I promise. But Ty Chandler is another important kind of running back, as was JT, as is Brees. And right, there's a lot of running backs that we need to discuss. Ty Chandler is one that is popping in a lot of optimals. I think you'll see show up in cash games. I'm a little weary of. I'm a little weary of the very small sample guys that pop up and the coach says, yeah, he's our guy or whatever, especially when Madison is back. Like, what does that split actually look like? I suspect it will be mostly Chandler, but it's tough to say. This also isn't the world's best matchup for Ty Chandler. I think in the receiving game, he'll be just fine, but the Lions have been really a pretty big pass funnel throughout the course of this year. For whatever reason, the old Lions that we used to play every running back that had a pulse against, they're shutting down the run and giving it up through the air. And so I'm a little bit down on Ty Chandler, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on him as one of the more popular running backs on this slate.
Yeah, so we're going to get a bunch of questions like that. They're like Ty Chandler versus like Swift because it's week 16, right? It's people's fantasy, like season-long championship league. So I would start Swift. But there you go. And a lot of it
I agree.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to Madison's back. We don't know like to what degree, but like if he's just out there getting snaps, even if he's not effective, if it's taking timeshare away from Ty Chandler, like that's not good. So like I think if he's going to be highly owned, I don't like Ty Chandler that much. I agree. Like if I want to play that game from the Minnesota side, I think it's like Nick Mullins and Justin Jefferson more so than Ty Chandler. Like there's just a lot of good running backs kind of like in that range that I'd rather play. Like I think like Jerome Ford is like pretty equivalent to Ty Chandler if Alexander Madison's going to be back. So I maybe play like Jerome Ford might be owned at like 1/10 the ownership of like Ty Chandler. So I play Jerome Ford because I think they have about an equal chance of hitting. And there's like a bunch of guys in that price range. I think you can kind of say the same thing for.
How would you compare Chuba, another guy that I think is in that price range? We've gotten a question or two about Chuba. How would you compare Chuba to Ty Chandler?
Yeah, so I like Chuba like more than Ty Chandler. And so like if Chuba's going to be lower owned, then I'd much rather go with Chuba Hubbard. He's been getting like the lion's share of the workload or whatever. Like Carolina changed coaches, and I remember thinking when they changed coaches, like, well, maybe they want to build Bryce Young's confidence by like letting him air the ball out because they have nothing to play for the rest of the season. And it's kind of been the opposite, where like I think they're trying to protect his confidence by not letting him throw the ball, and then kind of run Chuba Hubbard. But that gives us like some reliability like, just looking like 22, at least 22 carries in each of the last 3 games for Chuba Hubbard, and he gets some receptions as well when he can catch them. When they're catchable receptions or catchable targets. So, I like Chuba like more than Ty Chandler, especially given the news like Madison's going to be back and playing.
Whereas the injury stuff starts to roll in. Apparently, Aaron mentions Jaden Reed inactive. Bookmarking this one, we will come back to it, I promise. But I want to stay on these running backs and kind of pile through them because they're super important, but also there's quite a few that are intriguing to get to, and they're not difficult. They're kind of bizarre situations. The most bizarre one to me is what everybody has been asking about with, not Gibson. That's not bizarre. The Commanders stink. But the Bears, Donta Foreman out, and we have basically had, generally speaking, when all 3 were healthy, all 3 being Donta Foreman, Khalil Herbert, and Roschon Johnson, kind of a 3-way split that was very difficult to pinpoint, a little bit game script dependent. Roschon being kind of the premier pass catcher of the group would really vary. Last week, with Foreman in, Roschon got to 49% of the snaps, Foreman got to 26% of the snaps, and Khalil Herbert played 23% of the snaps. I think we are naturally gravitating to Roschon, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. He's the rookie on a team that's out of the playoffs, has played a little bit more, has the pass catching chops. But if Khalil Herbert comes out and gets the first carry and gets 23 carries in this game, would I be surprised at all? Not at all. So I'm curious what you're doing with the Bears running backs.
I'm probably not going to get there as much as the field is. I think a lot of people are looking at it as a good pivot off of like Justin Fields. So but I just don't know that I like pivoting off of Fields because I think he'll be too highly owned as a quarterback. But quarterbacks never get that 40% ownership that other positions get, where it's I need to think of a way to pivot off of this guy and get the leverage too, right? And that this mindset has worked out, right? I remember there was a Baltimore week where somebody said should I play Gus Edwards because Lamar Jackson's chalk? No, don't just pick another quarterback and Gus Edwards had 75 touchdowns that week. He just kept running the ball into the end zone. So I mean, Roschon could have a big game. I think for the price, he's fine. If you are left, I think especially on DraftKings, 4,800 or something. I think fine. He's fine. I think he's the best running back at that price that I can see. I prefer to get up a little bit more to the Jerome Ford, Devin Singletary, Chuba Hubbard range if I can. But that, you start adding some significant salary there. If you want to play a cheap running back, I think that's fine. And Roschon does catch some passes, which is a little bit different from some of the running backs we've seen before with Justin Fields. I don't know. I'm a little bit hesitant to go down that far in price with running backs because I think there's some guys that have pretty solid workloads, just a little bit more expensive than that, like Hubbard and Singletary.
That's my thing is we have not necessarily guys at his price range that we really like, but not that much more. And this slate, on one hand, it is tough if you want to do basically one thing. If you want the Dolphins game, it is tough salary cap wise. If you want to do anything else, there are none of the elite quarterbacks on this slate, right? Why is Justin Fields going to be pretty popular? Because we don't have any of the other big high upside, and Dak and Tua are not quite right. They're more pocket passers. There are none of the elite tight. I don't even know if there is an elite tight end left in the NFL anymore, right? But it's a little bit more of a slate that's everybody's 5 to 7K, give or take a little bit. And so I'm not saying that you can't play Roschon. I'm very interested. Let's just say this. I'm very, very interested in Roschon. I'm very interested in the Bears backfield in general. It's something that has been really efficient, real life wise, and somewhat for fantasy, ever since Justin Fields has been there. And that goes back to the whole rushing quarterback with his running backs. They are more efficient because the defense has to respect him, right? The defense doesn't have to respect the big doofy pocket passer, right? They can't move. They don't assign a player to him. That's an extra player on the defense that can go try to tackle the running back. When you got to worry about Justin Fields, that's a big deal. I mean, he's him and Lamar, the best rushing quarterbacks in the league. So I'm interested in them, but my concern for DFS today is that the field is just going to pile on to Roschon probably a lot more than we think, like more than ownership projections are going to update even, because it is a cheaper piece, right? It's like I can just go from Hubbard to Roschon. Now I get my Justin Jefferson or my tight end that I want, right? I don't have to punt tight end. I can get Trey McBride or something like that. I just have some concerns that like it's one of those steamy spots that we didn't really, we didn't think it would be that steamy, and then it becomes that. I will say in like maybe some larger field stuff, probably not the things that I'm playing in, it makes Khalil Herbert kind of interesting to me, because I think when people are going to go here, they're definitely going to Roschon. They're not. Herbert is the old dusty veteran, even though he's like been really good and he's like 24. But like he's the guy that not the sexy name. Roschon is the sexy name. And I mean, I think it's going to be a split regardless. But like if Herbert got more of the carries and the goal line carries, would I be surprised? Not at all. So I just wanted to like discuss the Bears running backs because I think it's both tricky and very enticing at the same time.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to be playing a ton of them just because I think it's going to like divide. Like, yeah, we don't know whether it's Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson, maybe it is Justin Fields getting the rushing touchdowns. I'm definitely not going to like write off all Bears. I think if I'm going somewhere, it's probably Justin Fields, because if I'm playing multiple lineups, if I'm playing 1/5 or I guess 1/6 or 1/7 of my lineups have Justin Fields, DJ Moore, I'm probably under the field, which is fine. I think that's about the chances of that hitting to be like the right combination. But like, there's just so many other teams that have implied point totals that are about the same, like Jacksonville, Seattle, Detroit, Cleveland. They're all kind of in this range, and like everyone's just trying to figure out like, well, who's going to score on the Bears? I don't know. It might not matter. Like, it might not matter that like Dante Foreman's out. So like I think you can go to Roschon. I think you can go to Khalil Herbert. I think like that's saving you some money at running back that you can then use to spend up at other positions. But it probably depends more what you're spending up on than which Bears running back you're picking.
Yes, exactly. Next time I'm going to spend 10 minutes talking about how much I love the Bears running backs and then let Squirrel go. Yeah, but just don't play them, you idiots. Kidding, obviously. This is like DFS. This is fantasy sports, like in like just absolute. I've been living this with the best ball stuff, right? Go to, if you don't know, I run our best ball site called spikeweek.com. And we have a Discord as well, just like RotoGrinders and Scores and Odds and everything do. And while these games are happening, right, we're in the fantasy playoffs. It's the big time of the year. You have the people who have, George Pickens or Gabe Davis on their teams, like celebrating in the Discord, like, yes, I love you. You have the people that don't have them, like, you SOB or whatever. And this is so Eric, love Chandler, Brian, fading that Chandler chalk today, right? It's like we're ping-ponging back and forth. I totally see both sides. And I think I oddly wanted to bring that up because of the Bears thing, because I think your take is really good and really spot on. But if somebody said, nope, it's Roschon time, I believe it. Like I'm all in. I don't think he's going to be owned enough, right? Based on whatever my logic is. I'm not going to argue with somebody about that. But I also think what you're saying is totally true. And it is a slate that the running back positions are very valuable. We have to be pretty cognizant of the fact that we can't just punt it off with a guy because someone else is out. There's a lot of running backs that are going to score some fantasy points today. Let's hit the last couple of running backs and move on to got to talk about freaking Packers wide receivers for like the 8th week in a row. But let me see here. There was a question on somebody that I'm totally missing. Chuckles, we did talk about Chuba. We both like Chuba quite a bit, actually, like in terms of the Bears running backs, Ty Chandler, some of those guys. What about, you mentioned Ford, Singletary. We can use this as a jumping off point. Like, where would you rank kind of amongst the cheaper guys? And then we can talk about the expensive guys to close. Chuba versus right Ford, Singletary, etc.
I probably like Singletary the most, then Chuba, then Jerome Ford, but I'm missing somebody in there. Let me see. In terms of cheaper running backs, yeah, I like Chuba the most, I think. Then Singletary, then Ty Chandler, then Jerome Ford, but I'd probably even go Ford over Chandler in super large field stuff, because if Chandler ends up overowned, I think Ford and Chandler are about equal, and I don't think ownership is going to reflect that.
So you're pretty into both the running backs on the side of the Browns game, which I think is interesting because it's not getting, Singletary a little bit of ownership, but neither of them are getting too much ownership.
Yeah, I just think Singletary's kind of established himself as the guy there. Whereas coming into the year, we're thinking Dameon Pierce, but Singletary's consistently excelled. I think he's just better in this scheme. And I think the last week was it was 26 carries, 120 yards. I think he should be going there. He's still only 5,500. Gets targets, gets receptions. Was it 170 total yards last week?
Could have had more, by the way. Had a late. He could have had 200. He had a late touchdown that got called back. That I would have. I mean, they won anyway, but would have iced the game. He about buried the crap out of me across all formats at the very end. But we got a little unlucky fading him. The matchup is pretty tough against the Browns, but none of that has mattered for him. We keep fading. I don't mean you. I mean we as an industry. He keeps coming in at reasonable ownerships, and it doesn't matter the matchup. He keeps producing.
Yeah, exactly. And this this team, even CJ Stroud going down. I kind of said it when CJ Stroud got the concussion that it's kind of a test of is Stroud that great, or is the offense? It might be the offense. And I think Noah Brown and Nico Collins are both back this week. That could open some things up. I should be playing some more Case Keenum now that I'm talking about it. I don't know. It's kind of in a weird play, but that offense might be actually much better than we would expect without CJ Stroud.
I agree. All right, we got some more good. I see all of your wide receiver and stat questions. We're going to get to those in a second. I want to polish up running backs. I think this is a good one because it's also a segue into said Dolphins. I think if anybody's playing the Dolphins, not necessarily Achane, but I think people will try to maybe play some Mostert. They might try to play some Tony Pollard on the other side. Where's Eric asked about? Just stop it with this. Look, no, Rico Dowdle has an awesome name. He looks like a very fun player. Maybe he'll be relevant next year. Let's not do the Rico Dowdle thing today. Step away from the brunch mimosas for a second and join us in the real world. But I'm not necessarily the Ty Chandler versus Achane, but I think we need to talk about the Dolphins running backs because you've kind of actually been one of the guys leading the charge. I think over the course of the season, when people are moving away from the Dolphins, it's Raheem Mostert has 20 touchdowns, dude. And he just keeps scoring and he keeps scoring fantasy points, but I know his price is going up, but it's completely warranted. So what about, are you trying to access a Mostert or an Achane or something as part of some Dolphins exposure?
Yeah, I particularly like Mostert. He has 7 touchdowns in the last four games. And Achane, I like Achane as a player. So I think there was a question Achane or Chandler more raw points might be a season long thing. I like Achane there. It's just that his price is elevated beyond the range that I can stomach for a guy that's getting 7 carries a game. So even if he takes one of them to the house, he's priced up he's getting 15, 20 carries. Mostert's getting the touchdown. So I prefer Mostert. They're both too expensive. But when I look at Mostert, I'm okay, well, he's got 7 touchdowns in the last 4 games. So I can stomach the price. Achane, if he's getting 8 carries a game. And they've kind of he's kind of been yo-yoing in and out of the lineup too, whereas he's returned, gotten hurt, taking a week off, return. So if this team has playoff aspirations, this is a team that wants to be playing in February. If they've got a young talented player that keeps getting hurt, they're probably not going to start running him out there for 15, 20 carries, just because let's take it easy on him. So I prefer Mostert. And I do like getting to Mostert as a spend up contrarian option because I don't think he's going to see ownership.
Yeah. I mean, compare Mostert to Jonathan Taylor at similar prices ownership wise. There's a lot. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is a bad man. I love him. He's awesome. The matchup is whatever. The game environment is disgusting. Then you have Mostert, who's on in one of the best offenses in the NFL, has 20 freaking touchdowns, is playing in the shootout of the week, also probably happens to be, we'll discuss this in the stack portion when we get to it, but you could argue the best way for the Dolphins to go after this one is to pound Mostert against the defense, right? Soften up the pass rush, right? They get the hand in the dirt, old school thinking we're going to slow down the pass rush with the run. But you could make that argument. And they're not going to run Tua at the goal line. And they don't have why does Mostert have 20 touchdowns? Like, take a step back. Tyreek and Waddle are amazing. Tua is amazing. Tua is not running at the goal line. Okay. Spoiler alert. And B, Tyreek Hill's 5'9", and Jalen Waddle's like 5'11". They don't have these like big body dudes that the goal line fade is the worst play in football, but like teams do it, right? We don't have to like it or whatever. When you have a big 6'4" huge wide receiver, they just throw it up to him. You know, Devontae Adams is going to come down with it a lot of the times. They've tried it with Tyreek. It's not very successful. So they just run with Mostert. If they get down there, he's their weapon to score. And so he also happens to be one of the fastest players in the entire NFL, so he can break a big one. So to your point earlier about like playmakers, the guy has the role and the ability to make the big plays, and no one's playing him in the game of the week.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think it's just so perfect that this game is not seeing ownership. Like I'm seeing like a little bit of like CeeDee Lamb showing up in some, like, if I really run extended like optimal lineups, I start getting some CeeDee Lamb. Like, people just aren't getting to this game, which is great. Because like I will take the risk, like especially if you're like multi-entering, like I will take the risk of like just rotating in a bunch of like super cheap guys, trying to get pieces of this game, and some of those super cheap guys are going to hit. And then when they do, like, you know, I think like CeeDee Lamb is like pretty consistent points for a wide receiver. I would say Tyreek Hill as well. It's just, you know, he's a little bit dinged up, but fine. Like, yeah, I'll play some Tyreek Hill, and maybe he's not dinged up. You know, not dinged up as much as the field expects. I think it was like Jalen Waddle went out early last week, and I thought like, oh, you know, he's probably out for the rest of the game, and you know, because he's a little bit hurt, and he like came back the next quarter, got a 70-yard touchdown. Like, these guys can make plays. So yeah, I am very interested in being over the field on like Dolphins and Cowboys this week. And accepting that I might have to go off the board a little bit for cheaper plays, but that's fine.
For sure. All right, some final questions, then we'll get to some of these passing stacks. Kid Catastrophe. We're not interested in Braxton Berrios. No, sir. Tyreek is back. We weren't interested in Braxton Berrios. Anyway, no offense to Braxton Berrios. He's very famous. He has a famous girlfriend who's on like a bar stool or something like that. Shout out to him. Good. He's living the good life. Shout out Braxton Berrios, but not playing him in DFS today. Karan asks about Brees or Ty Chandler in cash. So, you know, gun to your head, who do you prefer, Brees or Ty Chandler?
I think Brees Hall. Yeah, I think especially, and that might be a change from like some earlier projections that you might have seen when people are expecting Alexander Madison to be out. Like, I would definitely go Brees Hall. I
think it's a little bit safer. Yep. Oh, look at the RG chat already killing it. Ken Walker is in, and I'll use this as a segue. If you have more running back questions, please bring them. But we probably do got to talk a little bit about the passing games, and I'll use this as a segue into my sneakily favorite passing game today on the Seattle side. But Ken Walker is in. Do you have any interest in him for tournaments?
A little bit, but again, like for single entry, I probably wouldn't get there. Like, Tennessee hasn't been a defense we want to run against all season. Like, it's been this repeating thing where like running backs are like backup running backs get elevated, and then they're like really cheap, but they've been going against Tennessee. And the only one that hit was like Zach Moss earlier this year. So I do think like Seattle will score some points. I'm gonna end up over the field on Seattle stacks in my 156 because like it feels like nobody's going there. And they have like an implied point total right there with like the Bears and you know, Lions or Vikings, like other teams that people are getting to. So I like the idea of being overweight Seattle, but maybe more overweight the Seattle passing game than Kenneth Walker, just because like, and the Tennessee defense might be falling apart a little bit. So like I don't think you're crazy for going there. It's just not a place I'm like super targeting or trying to go out of the way to get.
Yep, I agree. I do think, like you said, you have a conviction about Ken Walker or you want to play him in large fields. I think the Tennessee defense is falling apart. They've suffered a lot of injuries. I think they're kind of exploitable everywhere. But to that end, they're still better against the run. And Ken Walker is going to play, you know, he's going to split with Zach Charbonnet. It's not like, you know, it's fancy Bears backfield. kind of in Seattle. I know that's a little bit weird, but it's kind of right. Roshan might be Ken Walker and Khalil Herbert might be Zach. I know not the exact roles, but it's some kind of split. We don't know exactly how it's going to be. And I just feel like we have some options that are a little bit better. And segueing into kind of some stacks and passing games we want to attack. I love this. I can't make really a lot of, I don't understand why Seattle's not getting more love from the passing game on this slate. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. They haven't been great this year. The box scores don't look awesome. Geno is back. There's maybe some concern about him, right? Because he's missed the last 2 games. But if you go look at just about any kind of like actual usage metric, in particular, DK Metcalf, I want to call out as we'll talk more about him maybe at the very end of the show when we get to a fun discussion that we always do at the end. His usage is basically like not Tyreek Hill level, but he's in the Mike Evans, that second tier of superstar wide receiver. He's top 6 in the NFL in end zone targets, top 6 in the NFL in red zone targets. It's like 7th in percentage of team air yards. He's basically should be right there with all of the elite wide receivers from a usage perspective. And it's not a talent issue. It's not like he's getting prayer yards, right? It's not a talent issue. They just haven't been on the same page this year, right? It just, sometimes that's how it goes. But I can't think of a guy who is more likely to pull the George Pickens and the Gabe Davis at low ownership in a great matchup. He's a mutant of a human being. He can make big plays. His usage is there. DK Metcalf is one of my favorite plays on this entire slate with this matchup and everything. And I think Geno's really cheap on both sites. I don't know that you need to save at quarterback, but there's also there's not a lot of competition at the top, right? Justin Fields, whatever, Dak, Tua. There's not a lot of guys to spend up on. So I just really like the Seattle passing game here. I don't think you have to bring it back. Somebody asked about Titans bringbacks. You don't have to bring it back. Nuke is fine. Chig is fine at tight end. Treylon Burks is 3,200 on DraftKings. I think is if you really need that cheap guy, go for it. But you don't have to do it. I think Geno Metcalf stacks are just they stand out to me on this slate.
Yeah, I think it's the Drew Lock factor. I think we all just watched Drew Lock go crazy in a primetime game, and he gave that great interview afterwards.
It was good, yes.
But people were and I think there was some question of whether Geno Smith was going to play. But I think Geno Smith is going to play, and this is a passing defense that we've wanted to attack. I agree. I think both sides of the defense have gotten worse. But the passing defense wasn't good to begin with. So why would we not play Geno Smith and DK Metcalf? And DK Metcalf is never a guy jumps off the page because median projections do him wrong. But then exactly, he gets that 180-yard game every once in a while. And we're hey man, why was DK Metcalf not projected higher?
The Dallas game. Do you remember he had one of the biggest games of the entire season against the Dallas Cowboys. This defense that were afraid to play Cowboys against, he did it. 40-something fantasy points.
Yeah, exactly. And I was actually I was really overweight on him because that factor of a guy exceeding his median projection is even more accentuated in Showdown, right? Where we only have one game to choose from, and everybody was getting to JSN and Tyler Lockett because there were more value plays, right? They were the point per dollar values on that slate. But yeah, I was DK Metcalf can also just get 20 times his price or whatever on because he catches 3 touchdowns and goes for 180 yards. So yeah, I like but yeah, I think the Seattle passing stacks in general are going to be under-owned on this slate, and some of it is just holiday week confusion over we don't know if Geno Smith is going to play. Or did you just see what we just saw from this team was Drew Lock going crazy? It's I'm not going to go play Geno Smith. But this is a matchup we have wanted to exploit all season. So no reason to stop now.
And I think the Titans are dead in the water and look dead, but they've pushed back enough in most of these games. The Seattle defense is pretty good, but it's not one I'm concerned that the Titans don't score at all, right? And so, Pete Carroll is a little bit of a boomer. You could see, if someone said I have those concerns that maybe they only throw it 24 times or something like that, that's fine. But A, if most of them go to Metcalf, who cares? But B, I think the Titans with what I assume to be Tannehill, that's one thing I haven't looked up. I haven't looked at the Will Levis thing. He was not expected to play. I'll look that up when we get a quick break here because I assume it will be Tannehill. But I just think that game in general, mostly Geno Metcalf, mostly Metcalf for me, I think is one I wanted to call out for tournaments because it just stuck out to me like a sore thumb. Like you said, it's not the same as Showdown. Let's go down this slate of guys who are maybe not very popular and find the guys that can. I'm not trying to. It's just a good reference because it happened last night. But I'm not trying to use that as the George Pickens thing or whatever. But who looks like this guy that could pull this George Pickens at totally reasonable ownership? Like it's not using it's not the Deontay Johnsons of the world, right? Deontay Johnson always projects better, and maybe that's Tyler Lockett. I'm not comparing them exactly, right? But it like people gravitate to that guy, the Deontay Johnson guy, because we know what we're going to get from him, generally speaking. But the George Pickens is like, I might get 3 points, I might get 35. I don't have the slightest idea which one it's going to be. And that's a little bit of DK Metcalf. And those guys are the ones I want to target because look at yesterday just happens to be an example of when it happens. George Pickens and Gabe Davis, when they hit, they do what Squirrel said. They so far exceed their projection that they win you tournaments. I want those guys. I don't want the guys that project for 15 points and I'm happy when they get 17. I want the guy that projects for 15 points and I'm happy when they get 40. Like those are the guys that I'm looking for. Next favorite. Go ahead.
Tannehill is starting. Will Levis, I think, is inactive. And Chig is playing as well.
Okay, good. That's good for all things there. I do kind of like Chig at tight end. We'll get to tight end a little bit later. There was a good question actually, which is some good stacks questions. Let's start here. And how do we feel about Flacco stacks? You mentioned the running backs in this game being appealing to you, but how do you feel about Nico? We mentioned Nico Collins is playing without any restrictions. Tank Dell, of course, is out. So maybe that gives a little more juice to the Texans passing game. And dude, I don't know what year it is. I think it's about to be 2024, but you wouldn't be able to tell by watching the Cleveland Browns for the last few weeks because Joe Flacco has turned back the clock. It's making me feel young again. The guy's out there slinging it all over the place. David Njoku is apparently just, new Travis Kelce with Joe Flacco. What do you think about the passing games in this one?
I do. I like this. It's actually not as cheap as as it was. So it doesn't actually give you like that much savings, and I think it's going to be like a little bit popular. But I like this game as a whole to like maybe go over the total. Cleveland defense hasn't been as good on the road, so I think that's fine. And especially, it does give you some savings that you can then use to maybe spend up on a player. So I think it's good. I like the Joe Flacco double stack, which I wouldn't have thought I was going to say at the beginning of this year.
What? Football is stupid, man. Football is so silly. I also think now this has. I think I mentioned this last week that I was mad at myself because I've been playing Browns pass catchers since Flacco got into the lineup, thinking we would get some of this stuff. Like sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but we're getting this kind of stuff. Like they're just throwing more, and he throws it down the field. Those two things. If you watch last night, why did George Pickens go off? Not just because the defense stinks, not just because George Pickens is good, but Mason Rudolph was willing to see the one-on-one coverage and just give his guy a chance. He just threw it up to him 3 times. Pickens happened to catch it every time. For a bit, that doesn't usually happen, but you need the quarterback that gives them the opportunity, right? DTR, PJ Walker, even Deshaun Watson before, and some other of these quarterbacks that are playing today are just not going to even give their guy a shot. So it's not in the range of outcomes to hit that big play. Flacco does it. So I think you can play Njoku or Amari Cooper, of course, Jerome Ford, and you don't have to stack it up. I think that those guys are viable plays either way because it's not just like Flacco's valuable as a quarterback. It's what he brings as kind of the point guard to he's Jason Kidd. He's not the basic point guard. He's the big play point guard.
Yeah, like Joe Flacco is like the old lady that just doesn't care anymore. He's just gonna throw the ball. Like what? I don't know. It's like what? Why would Joe Flacco not air it out? Right? If he turns the ball over, that's fine. So yeah, I agree. You want somebody that's gonna go out there and just throw the ball. And so I do think the Flacco Browns double stack is maybe more in play on DraftKings where you get a little bit more savings from that stack, from that double stack. But I really like the idea of playing that and running it back with Devin Singletary. And I don't mind the Casey Keenum side either. And because Nico Collins and Noah Brown are two of the top wide receivers in the league in yards per reception, is one of those things we were talking about. Guys are getting the ball and running down the field right into the end zone. That's what can elevate an entire game stack. So that's what I'm looking for So yeah, kind of like being like significantly over the field on that game.
Yeah, Case Keenum is like poor man's Joe Flacco, which is what a phrase to say in the year 2023. We're even mentioning these two names, and we're mentioning one of them as poor man's whatever. But like I said, he's not quite the gunslinger, but he's a little bit of that old school, like whatever, YOLO, you saw him last week. Very fun win. Sorry for the Titans fans. Sorry, Soccer Dave, for the L with the Titans last week. But if you saw it, it's pretty cool to watch Case Keenum go out there and play well. All right, some more stacks. I see you guys use questions. Dave, I see your question on a particular Lion. We're going to get to that game in just a second. But I want to talk about this one because I think this one's doesn't have to be the Baker side of things, doesn't have to be the Bucs side of things. But this is another game I think that is pretty darn appealing in terms of some scoring potential. So let's get this out of the way. I'm assuming Trevor Lawrence is in. We haven't got like official confirmation with that, but he has cleared protocol. He traveled to the game. Find it hard to believe that all that would happen and he wasn't playing. But of course, it's an afternoon game. Make sure you're paying attention to inactives and all of that. So maybe you can just swap to Baker if you have Lawrence or stacks of this game. But we have a situation where it's two pretty bad defenses. We've been picking on the Bucs all year. The Jags are worse on offense now for sure with their injuries, but it's also more consolidated on the Jaguar side. You have Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, Parker Washington, Jamal Agnew. Like it's pretty bad, right? Obviously Travis Etienne. And then on the Bucs side, we saw Chris Godwin finally pop up for a big game. He's got 23 targets in the last 2 weeks. But I think, this is a little bit more of an Evans spot to me, but nonetheless, this game is pretty appealing. What do you think about Jags Bucs for tournaments?
Yeah, I actually like it. I like it a lot because if Trevor Lawrence is coming back, like they're going to have confidence in him to throw the ball. The Bucs give up the second most passing yards per game in the NFL. And Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. Like, why would we not be playing the side of the game? I think it's going to see, so afternoon game. So we're probably not going to get like official confirmation, but I expect Trevor Lawrence to play, and I think that was a great play. Trevor Lawrence would potentially be the shock quarterback if we knew like on Monday that he was going to be playing against this like Tampa Bay defense. But I think the line has maybe even creeped up a little bit, like on the thought that Trevor Lawrence is now going to play. So I like this game. I like getting to the Jag side in particular because I think Trevor Lawrence is, assuming he plays, good quarterback, missing wide receivers in Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. So now he's a good quarterback going into bad passing defense, like one alpha wide receiver, a pass catching tight end. And if you want to like go there, you have savings to go to like a really cheap wide receiver for like one of the peripheral guys, like if you're going like Parker Washington or Agnew. So I don't. This is like one of the sneaker. I think it's one of the sneaker spots on the slate. Like maybe I'm missing like updated ownership projections or something. Like why would you not go here? Really like Rachaad White as one of the running backs. Like if I'm spending up on a running back, I think I'm probably going to spend up on like Rachaad White more than I spend up on Jonathan Taylor, because I think this is a game environment that can go off, and like people aren't looking at it that way. It's great. Yeah, hey, I'll be over the field.
Right. I understand Jonathan Taylor is like better at football than Rachaad White is, like at a high level. No one's arguing that. He's one of the best running backs in the entire NFL. But he's in a game that's like there's like no conceivable way, really. I say that it's going to be 42-35, but there's no yeah, exactly. Clip that. There's no conceivable way that game is like a monster shootout because neither team wants it to be a monster shootout, right? Like Arthur Smith wants to run, and quite frankly, without Michael Pittman, I guarantee you the Colts just want to run. That's good for the volume of Jonathan Taylor. It's good for the fact he's probably going to have at least a decent game, but it's not good for like getting a ceiling outcome. In this game, right, especially with pass catching, which is Rachaad White's best skill, honestly, he's not that good of a runner, and they're not a very good running team. But it doesn't matter because he plays almost every snap, and he gets a bunch of targets, and he gets the goal line carries. But that's why the game environment, like you said, kind of sets him over the top a little bit because even though he's not going to be as efficient as JT on the ground, he's just not as good of a runner as JT is. He's just as good of a receiver, probably better. He's going to get more receiving work, and his team is probably in a spot where they need and are going to have more potential for fantasy scoring. So I agree with you. What about Evans, Godwin? What do you think about those two?
Yeah, I think they're fine. I prefer like getting to the other side, like getting to the Trevor Lawrence side with their because like the Jags are favored in this game, even though they're on the team on the road. So I see it more of a, like, if I'm going to play this game as a stack, I like it more as a Trevor Lawrence, like Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, Rashad White. You can flip it. You can go maybe like Baker, probably go like Mike Evans, Baker, Mike Evans, and then maybe try to like completely like mirror image it and go like Travis Etienne. But
I like that.
Yeah, I do. I probably prefer the Jag side, but I think you can go either way on this game. I think the game as a whole just strikes me as being underowned. I know why. Like, it's probably the same reason as like the Seattle. Like, why is the Seattle passing game not being talked about? Like, well, there's some uncertainty. It's a holiday week. Like, people are struggling to like get their content out, And it's like, well, I'm not going to write up like a quarterback that might not be playing. But then nobody ended up playing the guy. And like, yeah, why are you not playing Trevor Lawrence against one of the worst pass defenses in the league? So yeah, I prefer the Jag side, but I think you can go either way.
I totally agree. I want to make sure I hit some of these questions. First of all, Matthew, don't bet this. They're just going to hold your money for the game and then refund it. I don't know why. You can still bet on Michael Pittman, but he's out. It's just going to be a no bet. So don't waste your time and give them the 0.000001 interest rate on holding your money or whatever for 3 hours. Let me see here. There was something.
Cashing at you. I'm not seeing the Michael Pittman receiving yards.
Yeah, refresh. So refresh your app or log in, log out. Our good friend Luis, I apologize if we didn't specify this, but there was another FanDuel question as well. I think we've been trying to hit kind of both as we talk about all these guys. But I do think the running back position in particular, wide receiver is a little bit more similarly priced kind of across the board. That's nuanced, but generally speaking, the most expensive wide receivers on FanDuel are pretty similar on DraftKings. FanDuel is a little bit peculiar at running back, and the gap from the expensive guys down to the cheaper guys is pretty wide on FanDuel. So what are you thinking like as your primary focus at running back on FanDuel?
Yeah, so it is pretty similar to DraftKings. Like, I would say probably prefer like spending down a little bit. So like going to Chuba Hubbard, Devin Singletary. So same as like, it wasn't like a DraftKings specific thing when I was talking about liking those running backs. I actually kind of like spending down a little bit more on FanDuel at running back, because you're not going to necessarily run into the situation where you've got a running back that gets like 8-10 receptions and it just buries you on receptions points. Like, that's going to happen more on DraftKings than on FanDuel. So like, don't mind like spending down. I'm probably going to spend down more on FanDuel and go to like Chuba Hubbard, Devin Singletary. If I am spending up, I probably like Rashad White and Bijan Robinson as like my two preferred spend up options for tournaments.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I want to throw Breece Hall in there. He kind of falls into a little bit of a no man's land on FanDuel, which makes me just like him a little bit more. Not no man's land. He's 7,400. I feel like I'm not saying ownership projections are dictating this, but just a gut feel thing that like people are going to go down and get your Chuba or your Ty Chandler or maybe Roshan now or whatever, or they're just going to say, yeah, give me JT or whatever. And then you have those guys in that, 7 to 8K range that maybe just fall through the cracks a little bit more than they would. And I like that. Those are the kind of guys I like for single entry tournaments, because it's like, I don't got to go play Rico Dowdle, in the FanDuel single entry. I can just make that slight pivot. Like you said, I think Singletary is another great one. You mentioned Jerome Ford. I think those kind of guys make for great single entry plays. Shannon, ETN. You can do the Bucs side, right? Like you mentioned, do that kind of inverse Bucs side of things, play ETN and Evans and Baker or whatever. I think makes plenty of sense. Carolina guy, we'll hit this at the very end. I promise we'll hit this at the very end. I want to get through a couple more games here. Let's talk about Cowboys Dolphins really quickly. And like, obviously I think people know that we're interested and excited about this game, but specifically, how do you play it, right? How does it actually fit into, how do I get Tyreek Hill? How do I get CeeDee Lamb? We talked about the Dolphins running backs. Do you play any Tony Pollard? How much are you actually stacking this game, right? How do I, in a salary cap world that we love to joke about, how do I actually play this game?
Yeah, I just like hit the lock buttons and on like lineup HQ, and then you can like seriously like, and then it just like take whatever you get. It
works. Yeah,
it works. And like you end up with some like ugly kind of looking plays, and so this is like a little bit projected a little bit less than the Justin Fields lineup that I got like when I just hit the optimize button. But I think this lineup, right? If you just like lock button like CeeDee Lamb and like Raheem Mostert, like people just aren't getting there to that kind of combination. And I don't mind the idea of even if it's giving you another game stack, right? Like you've got like some kind of Joe Flacco, Devin Singletary, David Njoku game stack, but you've got like the Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb lock buttoned, or the CeeDee Lamb and Raheem Mostert like lock buttoned. Like I kind of like playing this game maybe as like a mini stack. I don't like always use that terminology or whatever, or even think that way, but like you can use this game as like a secondary correlation off of a game stack that's maybe from a lower point total game. But like if you think about it, like if Trevor Siemian throws like one touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson, one touchdown pass to Tyler Conklin, like that is totally conceivable. And you don't think of that as winning you a massive tournament. And it's like, but like if that's also getting you like Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb, like then those guys are putting up like 300 yards with 3 touchdowns combined. Like that is what wins you a tournament. And like everybody will look at that lineup and be like, oh yeah, like well, like how like Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb went nuts. Like that wasn't that hard to guess, but what you had to do was like plug in that like Trevor Siemian, like if he gets like 2 or 3 touchdown passes, and we kind of probably know where they're going to go, right? So like Garrett Wilson, like maybe Tyler Conklin, like that's some super savings that then is letting you spend up on anything else you want. And then suddenly you've got like 2 or 3 pieces from the Dallas Miami game. I don't necessarily want to like it's not just like Tyler Conklin. It could be like Case Keenum. I'm willing to like go pretty far down on the quarterback list today. Maybe not to Bryce Young, but basically anywhere else. I was writing my article and I was like, Trevor Siemian's like the cheapest quarterback on the slate today. It's like, oh my God, like they've got Bryce Young priced down below Trevor Siemian. So yeah, I was probably not going to Bryce so much. And if I like reverse jinx him, he deserved it for this holiday season. But yeah, so like I'm willing to go pretty far down on the quarterback pricing list. Like stack that up with like cheap wide receivers and have some like ugly looking game stacks to get just a couple or a few correlated pieces from this like Dallas Miami game.
I love it. Fully on board. These people have heard me talk enough about the Desmond Ridder over the court, right? Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell. We've talked about all these crappy guys. These are specifically the situations that you do that for. I understand that today maybe doesn't feel awesome. Those guys don't feel totally awesome, but like you don't need that much. And there's not as much opportunity cost today. You don't got to fade Josh Allen. You don't have to fade Jalen Hurts. You don't have to fade, a lot of these guys. Okay, you got to fade Justin Fields. You're gonna have to fade somebody. Like you have to. You can't play all the highest expected pieces. If you play Justin Fields, guess what? You don't get any of the Dolphins game. So I love it. That's gonna be my plan, is to see how I can make something Tyreek and CD work here. My problem is we'll get to the flag plants. My DK Metcalf obsession is certainly getting in the way, and it really starts to get tricky if you play Metcalf, Tyreek, and CeeDee Lamb. But we'll see what we can do. We haven't talked about Lions Vikings. I want to hit that super quickly, and I want to make sure we hit the Packers with Jaden Reed out. So how are you? So the Lions were a slate winner last week. Jordan Addison was a slate winner last week. Ty Chandler has been a slate winner. There's a lot of potentially appealing pieces in this game, indoors in a dome. But it's a little tricky one. How are you handling Lions Vikings?
I think I'm going to end up under the field. I'm not trying to avoid it. It just strikes me that I think it's going to show up pretty highly owned. I think especially on DraftKings when you start like running optimal lineups, you're getting just a ton of Justin Jefferson and like Nick Mullins, and like it's fine. I don't think it can't hit. I just think it's like so many people are going to hit like the optimize button and get that stack, and it starts to look like, oh, great, I got like Nick Mullins and Justin Jefferson, and like I think Mullins might end up being like the second highest owned quarterback after Justin Fields. And it's like it's kind of my same feeling of like it's fine. I'd rather just get like equal exposure to everything, because I don't think that those games in particular have like a higher chance of hitting. And I do like the idea of like if you're gonna go to that game, like maybe try to make sure you get like over the field on the Lions pieces, because that's the favorite team. Like I know they're more expensive, so they're not gonna show up necessarily as like the better point per dollar plays. Like, but NFL DFS is not a point per dollar game. It's trying to get those 3 touchdowns. And I think like those touchdowns are more likely, like just like the game line indicates, like those touchdowns are more likely to come from the Lions side. So I like the idea of maybe trying to get like a Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Jared Goff, TJ Hawkinson stack, and instead of like the Nick Mullins, like Justin Jefferson thing that I think is going to end up being pretty overowned, honestly.
Yeah, I like Hawkinson. I think you tagged Hawkinson in Light Up HQ. I like that one a lot as the only piece that nobody wants to play on the Vikings. I think is pretty interesting. Quickly, before we start to segue out of here, and we'll try to answer this, and we'll try to hit as many of these last couple questions rapid fire before we get out of here. With Jaden Reed out, with Christian Watson out, gross game. Very much. The aforementioned Bryce Young is playing in this game. What do we do with the Packers wide receivers? I think the people, are possibly thinking about them as one of those value spots that they could get to get your Dolphins. What are you doing with the Packers?
So I'm going to end up playing like more Dontavian Wicks than I want to. And we'll see. I haven't like figured it out yet because like the news kind of came while we're on the show. But I know he's just going to project very well for his price. I don't love it, no pun intended, just because this team is still not projected to score that many points. It's still not like a game environment I really want to target. So I'm just going to end up with a ton of Dontavian Wicks as a one-off, which I don't love again. And then I see somebody in the chat is asking HN or Ty Chandler for raw points. I still have HN like projected a little bit better, but I feel like he's like much riskier. Like I would say if it's a season long question, if you think you're like potentially going to be down in the game, maybe go HN. Like I think he's got like a kind of a much more spread out like range of results. Whereas I think Ty Chandler is probably safer points, but overall I've got like Chandler projected under HN. So.
Makes a ton of sense. I just want to throw out a couple of quick Packers names that I think everybody's going to run to Wicks, and I totally understand it. I think Malik Heath was a guy who has been picking up a lot of extra snaps. I'm looking at it right now.
Of course you like Malik Heath.
Yeah. Is he crappy and cheap? Yes. Those are my kind of guys. I can pipe dream about them scoring a touchdown, and then I can celebrate even if they don't win me any money. Those are the best. But Malik Heath played 33% of the snaps last week. Jaden Reed actually only played 42% of the snaps. I was trying to see about Samori Toure. Anyway, look, if you really want to dumpster dive, I think there are a couple Packers guys not named Wicks that you can play this week. That's all I'm trying to say. And Kraft, yes,
right end too. So
100%. If you have questions that we did not get to, these three fine gentlemen will take you leading up to lock. But before we get out of here, I of course am going to give, which I think I've given away over the course of the entire show, my flag plant, my hot take, my tournament winning play of the day. But we got to get Squirrel, what's winning all the money today?
So yeah, and I'm going to tie this into I think there was a favorite single entry stack. So hot take: despite Trevor Simeon's 300 yards passing, Trevor Lawrence is going to be the highest scoring quarterback on the slate.
Double hot take in one. You snuck in a Trevor Simeon hot take amongst a Trevor Lawrence hot take. I love it. I can't believe you're starting to talk me into the Trevor bros, in particular Trevor Simeon, but I'm feeling it a little bit. Mine, however, is unfortunately to our good friend Soccer Dave and Tennessee Titans fans everywhere. DK Metcalf is winning the slate today. That is a grown, man, and the Titans are not that anymore. And they're playing for the playoffs. DK Metcalf 3 touchdowns today. Wins all the slates. I'm just going to go ahead and pass it over to these guys. Roth, I assume you're going to run the show here for us. Nice to see you. I've seen these other two guys every single week. It's been too long. I think the last time I talked to you, you were doing karaoke about 9 months ago. And
the last time we were a few more beers deep than we are right now. But yes, good to see you. And hopefully we can run that back sometime soon, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week on GPP Final Takes. Good luck, win all the money, and listen to these guys for the next hour. See ya.
Good stuff. As always, welcome to it, ladies and gentlemen. This is crunch time. As mentioned, we're going to take you all the way up until lock. We're going to break down the slate, talk about cash, talk about GPPs, and hopefully we're going to win you a whole bunch of money here. It is Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas Eve to you. I see, TJ, you are wearing your Christmas find. Oh, it's a Deadpool Christmas shirt. That's amazing. I'm pretty proud of you, man. We got TJ in the house. What up, TJ? How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited about Christmas. I'm excited about all the sports. I have a medication I'm supposed to take every evening, and I have an ADHD medication I'm supposed to take every morning. And I accidentally took my ADHD medication before bed last night, as opposed to the other one. And so not only did I sleep terribly, but if I don't take the other one, it gives me all kinds of crazy like dizziness side effects. So I kind of already, don't get me wrong, I'm ready for the slates. Yeah. But I kind of feel like I've either had too many eggnogs or somebody slipped something into an eggnog, and I'm all over the place right now. So it's going to be an interesting Christmas Eve.
Very nice. You never know what's going to happen over these next 40 minutes or so. Good to know. If I see you pass out, we'll know what's up.
Yeah, if I all of a sudden just start like,
yeah. Okay.
That's why.
Okay. We got Dre in the house. What up, Dre? Man, long time no see. How are you?
Yes, long time no see. I'm doing good here. Ready for Christmas, spend time with the family and ready to break down the slate and hopefully have everyone come in second place behind me in whatever tournament that I'm in.
As always, Dre is wishing you almost the best. Almost. He said just almost get you to the top. Hey, guys, this is actually my first time hosting an NFL Crunch Time, so I don't quite know the format, the pattern. TJ helped me out a little bit, but if I forget something, if I say something stupid, just correct me, and we'll do the best we can here over these next 40 minutes. I would love a slate overview. If TJ, you think it's possible to just give me like a general, this is the spot everybody wants, here's a sneaky spot. Is there news? The whole point of this show is to take you up until lock. So what are we waiting for news-wise? What do we need to know here before we start going position by position?
I think we're basically good for news at this point. Like, the only thing we're really like somewhat waiting on is Trevor Lawrence isn't officially ruled in. He's traveling with the team. He practiced. Like, he's gonna play unless something bad happens in warm-ups. He's gonna play. And that's in the late game. But other than that, unless we're gonna get something of like, Chicago's already, we know, is going to be without one of their running backs. So unless we get some type of news later of, say, hey, this player is going to get the bulk of the snaps, that'll be viable. But other than that, there's only one thing we're really waiting on. And again, we have a good lean, and that's Tyreek Hill. And it's an incredibly important thing that Tyreek Hill is still listed as questionable, but he's practiced the last 2 days. Or 3 days, sorry. So again, we're waiting on the news, but we expect him to play. We expect Tyreek Hill to be in there. So nothing big that we're waiting on. The thing is, though, in terms of the slate overview, like, it's a weird slate. It's we don't have, Christian McCaffrey. We don't have half the expensive players we're usually interested in paying up for, because there were games last night on Saturday. There's games today. There's Christmas Day games tomorrow.
3 of them. Yeah.
So they're going crazy with spreading it out. So it's a much smaller slate than usual. We don't have the same type of, hey, let's jam in these 3K players so that I can play Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, and this third expensive running back. We don't have that this week. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a bit more balanced. We got a lot of running back, I would say, is probably the toughest position this week. Just because there's so many strong ones, all priced within like $1,000 of each other. So that's definitely the most kind of crucial thing to get right this week, I think. Okay, or the other way around, it won't matter at all because all of these running backs that look good actually do well, and so it'll matter at the other positions.
Right. Okay. I saw this comment in the chat that I liked. Ryan says, dude on the right looks like he spent the last 18 hours building a Minecraft city, which is such a unique dig, but so good. It is just fantastic.
You got me. I didn't, but I can't deny that, like, this background, this sweater, my eyes looking the way that they are right now have just like glossed over, and me having 3 hours of sleep last night, he got me.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. Quick weather update. The last few weeks, we've had big time weather issues, big weather concerns. I do not expect that this week. The things worth noting, it's super foggy in Chicago right now. But by game time at 3:30, the fog is gone. Maybe some fog moves back in late. I don't really care. I don't think it's going to matter no matter what. It's a little bit breezy in Miami. Winds are about 15 miles per hour, gusting to 25. Could that impact a long field goal, a deep bomb? Yes. But is it going to impact 95% of the game? No. Just stick with whatever you're doing there. And then last but not least is tonight's game in Denver. It's freaking cold. It's going to be in the 20s. Feels like temperature in the teens. Again, I don't think that really has a big impact on how the game plays. So bottom line is that I don't think weather is a concern that we have to worry about, which is nice. After a couple busy weeks, we can work with something a little lighter. Let's talk about some of these stacks here. And, that's what you got to get right. If you want to win a GPP, you got to get that right. So, Dre, why don't you walk me through some of your favorite stacks? What's the chalk? What's the smart play? What's something a little off the board? Just walk me through your thoughts in general.
Well, the chalk from what I'm getting at, from what I've been hearing around the industry, is pretty much going to be Justin Fields today in cash, and a lot of tournaments, just from the upside that he can bring to the table with running the ball and passing to DJ Moore, who's in a great matchup today. So that's what everyone's going to try to be at on the field today. And also the total is at a 42.5 total, so it's seen it going up a little bit here. Actually, everything went a little bit down. But there's a lot of different. To me, there's a lot of little bit different ways you get different. I've actually got a smaller quarterback pool than I normally do this week. Because I'm just high on certain guys this week, like we mentioned before on the other show, Trevor Lawrence, who I like a lot. Baker Mayfield, stacking him up with his receivers, I like him a lot too. Geno Smith, as Beimfohr mentioned before, that no one's really talking about. Like, I think he's in a great matchup today, and he's going to be low owned. And obviously, you got Joe Flacco, who I think is fantastic, in a good spot with Njoku, who I love to play him. And then obviously Nick Mullins as well is going to be popular. The second, probably the first most popular, or the second most popular. Actually, the first was probably because of the price, but I hear a lot of people talking about Justin Fields as well too today.
Okay. Any other names you want to toss out there, or stacks that you like? Not necessarily what other people are doing, but what you're doing stack wise.
I'm doing right now. I'm getting a lot of Baker Mayfield. I'm high on Baker. I'm high on Trevor. I'm high on that game. I do like also Geno Smith and Joe Flacco a lot too. So I'm getting over the field on those guys. I'm trying to get at the field with Justin Fields and Nick Mullins a little bit here too as well.
Okay. All right. Very good. TJ, I want your thoughts, not on my just absolutely massive cup. It's so tall that, like, to get it up on the desk, I have to lift it uncomfortably high so I don't bang into it. I want your thoughts on top stacks, TJ.
Yeah, so optimal today, you're looking at the Vikings and the Bears as the two places most people are going to be going, but there are still lots of strong pivots as well. I have a pretty small quarterback pool today, like Dre. I'm running a cash lineup, then I got about 5 tournament lineups, and then I'm running 150. And so in that 150, I have a much smaller pool than I usually do. The entirety is I'm going no Baker Mayfield today. That's the one place I differ with Dre. I like all the other plays, but I'm going no Baker Mayfield today. I have Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Gardner Minshew, Geno Smith, Joe Flacco, Nick Mullins, Taylor Heineke, and Trevor Siemian. And CJ and Case Keenum. Case Keenum is the other guy that I have in there as well. So I'm messing around with a lot of these cheapies. Case Keenum, Trevor Siemian, Taylor Heineke, just because I kind of view all of them as the same, and that includes the Baker Mayfields and the Geno Smith. So Geno's a bit more on DraftKings. He's priced super cheap on FanDuel. On FanDuel, he's picking up some ownership. On DraftKings, he should be nice and low owned. I'm messing around with a lot of the ugly cheap quarterbacks in tournaments today, and we don't have to a lot of spend ups to jam in, but we do have Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson who are really interesting today. So that's kind of how I'm looking to build. Okay, very good. Well, we got to dive into things position by position, help people build those lineups as we are just a little more than 30 minutes away from lock. We do like starting with FanDuel because this show is sponsored by FanDuel. And if you bet $5 on any money line, you get $150 in bonus bets if your team wins. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Shout out to our sponsor, FanDuel. And a quick reminder, this show is free, and all we ask for is the little thumbs up there. It's on your screen. Hit that like and subscribe button for us. We need more eyeballs so we can keep the show free. That's the goal. TJ, let's walk through a build here on FanDuel. I guess we can start with quarterback, even though we kind of just did that.
Yeah, so like I'll kind of handle the cash game side of things. And on FanDuel, Justin Fields is picking up all the ownership at cash game, and we're not worried about ownership in cash, but I'm here to tell you that you can play Nick Mullins in cash too. Based on a few, like looking at a few different projection sources, I like to basically combine the RotoGrinders projections and the Blitz projections, find somewhere in a happy medium, and base my own thoughts in there as well. And Mullins is a lot higher over there. And because of that price difference, I don't think you have to go Fields in cash. You can go Fields or Mullins. If you like your lineup with Fields, by all means, play the guy with the rushing upside in cash, going up against the Cardinals. He could easily have 100 rush. That was my bold take on the Blitz, is he could have on the Blitz show this week with Will and with Dean subbing in and then with Cardi, was that Justin Fields has a massive rushing game, 100 yards on the ground, scores as well. If you like your lineup better, like if you like your lineup with Fields, by all means, play Justin Fields today if you can get up there. But if you just really like it way better with Mullins, you don't like your cheap options with Fields, you can absolutely play Nick Mullins in cash today as well. Those are the only two. You're choosing between Mullins or Fields, and honestly, we'll be able to save time on DraftKings because there as well, it's Mullins or Fields. You're playing one or the other in cash.
Great.
In tournaments, like I said, I also love Trevor Lawrence, but I'll let Dre elaborate there. Same with Joe Flacco. I'm getting this Geno Smith, Taylor Heineke, Trevor Siemian, and as well as why do I keep forgetting his name? Case Keenum.
Okay, very good. Dre, any other quarterbacks you want to throw in there that you've got in tournaments? I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, yep. In tournaments on FanDuel, I definitely going to pretty much get a lot of Baker, try to get a lot of Baker Mayfield, get a lot of Geno Smith. I don't even mind. I know it's kind of hard to get to, but a lot of people aren't going to be able to get to it. So, a guy like Dak Prescott, if you want to skinny stack it with him and CeeDee Lamb. So I don't mind that today as well, or even Tua, if you want to skinny stack that with Tyreek Hill or Waddle as a one-off. You can do that too as well here. And I don't even mind them if you want to take some shots in tournaments. This is a deep tournament. Like if you're going for like if you're playing against like 300,000 people, like I do kind of like Jordan Love. If you want to pair him though with like Aaron Jones and with Kraft, the tight end, I think that's also another option you can take today as well on the slate.
Okay, very good. Let's kick it to the running back spot. TJ, you mentioned off the bat, we don't have the CMCs this week. Who do we have? Where are you looking here in cash?
Yeah, so Jonathan Taylor is the most expensive running back this week at $9K on FanDuel. Now, he's much cheaper on DraftKings, but he's $9K on FanDuel. Zach Moss is out. I don't really get why he's picking up so much projected ownership right now. Here, maybe I need to refresh or something. Or unless we got to refresh on the screen, because I was having Jonathan Taylor at like 25% ownership. And if we get that, that's kind of crazy. Here, hold on. I just refreshed.
Yeah, looks like it's down to 12.
No, it's down to 12. Down to 12. Yeah. So that is much more chill for Jonathan Taylor in tournaments. Good. I thought I'd have to convince people not to play him in cash. Now he's just a tournament play. All Excellent. Fine. Rashad White, 7,700, totally fine cash option. Ty Chandler is reasonable at 6'9" as well. I do worry about him a little bit just because Alexander Madison is back. Now they're saying he's still banged up. It's supposed to be still Chandler's backfield. But one of the main reasons we liked him is he was supposed to get 85% of the workload today in the backfield, 85% of the snaps. We don't know that's the case anymore. It's not a sure thing. And so just because he is picking up a lot of ownership in cash games and in tournaments, if you want to plug him in cash, that's totally cool. But I don't hate the idea of going elsewhere. My favorite of any of these guys on FanDuel is Chuba Hubbard at 6'4". Nice and cheap salary-saving guy. I like him quite a bit there. I think if you land on Aaron Jones or Roshan Johnson, that's even fine. But my favorite pairing for cash games, I think, is going to be Chuba Hubbard number 1, Bijan Robinson number 2, and Breece Hall number 3. That's actually where I like going best here. I'm totally fine with Rachaad White, totally fine with Ty Chandler, but Bijan, Breece, and Chuba are my 3 guys that I like best on FanDuel.
Very good. Dre, I'll bring you into the mix here. Running back position, where are you?
Apologies, I screwed that up. Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary is in that tier as well, 6,200. I just completely botched on him, but Singletary is another guy I really like today, even in cash games, tournaments, whichever one. $6,200 is cheap. He has been getting the workload there. Dameon Pierce isn't really stealing too much from him, and so Singletary is another guy that is in that discussion.
And with the new quarterback, is he dumping off? Is he throwing to Singletary, or is he a check
but
down?
like it doesn't really matter as much. I think they brought up, I can't remember if this was the Grinders Live show or the GPP Final Take show the week before, but maybe I think this was Squirrel and Erik who were talking about this. CJ Stroud looked incredible, but we're kind of seeing that like maybe just the offense is just good. Maybe it wasn't Stroud elevating this team. Maybe it's just this whole offense is designed pretty well.
Yeah. All right. Dre, running back spot. What are you thinking?
Running back, obviously Chuba Hubbard, I think is a good play today. Rachaad White is an excellent play who I love to get to a lot of in tournaments here, regardless of the percentage owned. But some of the cheaper guys that I do like a lot here is Kenneth Walker, coming in like 10% that we have here. I like him a lot. Aaron Jones, another guy who I talked about before, pairing him with Jordan Love or even just running him by himself, I think he's a good option, especially with no receiving options. So, like, to me on both sides, I think, but obviously it matters more on DraftKings for as far as being a full point per dollar and full PPR as far as FanDuel having a half point PPR. But Aaron Jones, I think, is still a great value today because he's going to be catching probably balls out the backfield, probably split out wide as well as running the ball. So I like his usage today a lot. Roschon Johnson's one of my favorite tournament plays on the slate, so I would definitely be well over the field on him today for sure. I don't mind these Minnesota running backs. Minnesota running backs. The Detroit running backs. I just wouldn't play them together. I'd probably lean more towards Gibbs though on the slate as well. And that's pretty much it. It's a lot of running backs that you can go with today. Honestly, like Singletary, Breece Hall. I'm not high on Bijan. I'm just tired of the Atlanta situation and what they do. So I'm just trying my best not to play as much Bijan as I can. Everyone can take a chance on it. It is a good place and a great spot, but for me, it's just a little bit of the fatigue with the coach and how they've been using him when he should be used a lot more than what he is.
Yeah, it's frustrating every single week for sure. All right, let's go to the wide receiver spot, and I'm just starting a build. Like full disclosure, I'm just looking at things, and there are so many guys at the top that I want to jam in, and I can't. TJ, so where are we prioritizing these spend ups, or are we not? Are we getting cheap dudes?
Kind of a mixture of the two of them. So my priority spend up today is going to be Justin Jefferson. He is tier 1 for me. Tyreek Hill, like on FanDuel, Tyreek Hill is tough to get to with 10K, but the price also isn't that different between the two of them. So it's almost a 1A and 1B, but I do find it a little bit easier to get to Justin Jefferson. So that's kind of how I would rank them, is slight edge Jefferson 1, followed by Tyreek Hill. The only other spend up I have a lot of interest in on FanDuel is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown at 8,600. CeeDee Lamb is picking up some ownership. That's the one place that I'm looking to get underweight on. I'm not on, like, there's a lot of hype around CeeDee Lamb today. I'm not on there. I'd way rather just go to Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, and then even I'd rather Mike Evans or Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, because I think CeeDee Lamb's going to have a really tough day with that Miami secondary. I actually like the Miami defense today. Dallas has struggled on the road. He's going to have Jalen Ramsey all up in his grill all day long, and I'm heavily underweight on CeeDee Lamb. So that's where I'm looking to get the fade, and I'm using that ownership on Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, and then sprinkling in some Mike Evans, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a lot more interesting on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel, but I think he still makes for a strong tournament play on FanDuel as well. In terms of like who to prioritize in cash, I think you're playing one of Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill, whichever one you can get to easier. I think basically if maybe you're playing if you're playing Nick Mullins, I think you're maybe trying to prioritize Justin Jefferson just to get that little extra correlation in there if you have it in some tournament lineups. But the two players I think you're prioritizing the highest in FanDuel cash, you have Calvin Ridley at $6,800. No Christian Kirk. Tampa Bay is one of the best passing matchups possible, and he's going to get Trevor Lawrence back. I think Ridley's got to be priority one today. And then Dontavian Wicks as a salary saver, he's $5,400. No Christian Watson, no Jaden Reed. He's going to be maybe the number one receiver, if not number two, between him and Dobbs, but he's nice and cheap. And so if you can kind of go the expensive and cheap route where you'll find yourself going to Wicks and then somebody like Hill or Justin Jefferson, or you can stick in the mid-range and then you're probably looking at Ridley, Garrett Wilson, and then maybe even Drake London as the last piece you're considering in cash.
Very good. Dre, your thoughts at receiver?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, perfect. So receiver, I agree with 100% with the CeeDee Lamb take. It's a tough matchup, but I do like it for tournaments. I don't mind it. But I think this Miami defense with him coming back. With the corner coming back, Ramsey is a big difference maker here, and he's been playing well lately. So yeah, I am gonna probably be a little bit underweight on CeeDee Lamb. I would be. Tyreek is obviously always a must play. I love Justin Jefferson this week. I think he's a fantastic play. Garrett Wilson should see a lot of targets peppered to him, so I love this matchup too. I think DJ Moore's an excellent play. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I would be well over the field on them, and as well as DK Metcalf. And Tyler Lockett. Those are the four guys I would be so far over the field on both sites. I think that you just have to be. I don't mind Wicks here in this spot, but I'll probably be a little bit at the field and maybe a little bit over for him today as well. Drake London should see a lot of targets, so I do not mind taking some shots on him. I like JSN as well, too. I think you can double the field with him. Don't forget about Addison when it comes to these Minnesota guys as well. I think he's a fantastic guy, fantastic option. And also, I like Curtis Samuel a good amount here. I think he probably is the number. Even though Terry McLaurin is the number one option, I still think Curtis Samuel he just has been playing well this year and getting a lot of targets and making the most with them. So he would be the number one receiver I would play from Washington, and probably the only receiver I would play. So I don't mind taking some shots with him as well today. And Jameson Williams is also a must play if you're running a lot of lineups out there in tournaments, I feel.
Very good. Okay, let's get to tight end. TJ, run through it real quick. Of course, we're 20 minutes to lock. We still have to do DraftKings and take some questions too, so we may need to step on the gas.
FanDuel cash, play Trey McBride.
That is stepping on the gas. Easy enough. Anyone else even in consideration, TJ?
No.
Okay. Excellent. Dre, what are you doing at tournaments?
Evan Ingram, Hawkinson, Njoku, Kyle Pitts, Cole Kmet. Those are my main guys. I play on both sides, honestly, but I'll be well over the field on Njoku and Hawkinson for the most part, and Evan Ingram, because Evan Ingram's going to be probably split out wide and get a lot more targets.
Okay, good stuff. TJ, we can skip flex, I suppose, because we already kind of went over all these positions. So let's do defense. Do you care as a general rule? Do you even put thought into it? Or is it just impossible to try to game and you just kind of click whoever's cheap and whatever works?
For tournaments, really just whatever fits your lineup and try and play somebody low owned. For cash, there is benefit to just playing the higher owned player in a cash game. And so there is a nice, highly owned, cheap defense in cash games. You play the Seahawks. Okay,
great. Dre, any other teams that you're intentionally targeting?
I'm targeting Miami. I'm targeting Miami especially. That's wow. Look, I took it actually. Hold on, I actually took some notes of this because I was looking at it yesterday when I was doing some research. Dak Prescott this season on the road has only had one game where he had over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Other than that, has had 1 touchdown in every single game on the road, besides another game where he had 2, and he's had less than 275 yards in almost every game. And only 2 of those games were over 200 yards. Everything else he's been playing on the road is horrible. He's had 8 touchdowns to 5 interceptions in 7 games this year on the road. He's not playing that well on the road. So I'm taking that and going to be well over on Miami's defense for that reason alone.
Okay, very good. Guys, let's kick it over to DraftKings here. We've kind of run through that FanDuel build. We got some folks in chat asking about DK. TJ, you want to lead us off with maybe what's different, or should we just dive into a DK cash build?
No, we can just dive right into the build, I think, because
Sure.
it's a lot of the same stuff, but just different in a few positions. So it's nice to save lots of time for questions, and I'll give a few more. There's more tournament differentiation for me, I think, on DraftKings, because there's more different things you can do with the build with some 3K guys to splash in.
Okay, well, I do need some value, and I'm intrigued. So why don't you start at QB, TJ, and we'll work our way down.
All right, let's do it. So again, you're choosing between Mullins or Justin Fields in cash. I give the lean to Mullins. He's so much cheaper. I think you play Nick Mullins in cash, $5,300. I think that's the guy. You play your Mullins with your Justin Jefferson. It's nice and easy to do on DraftKings. That's my preferred single entry strategy, and that is my preferred cash game option too. To reiterate, in tournaments, I'm also getting to Justin Fields, Trevor Siemian, Taylor Heineke, Geno Smith, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Flacco, Gardner Minshew. That is the entirety of my pool. And then Nick Mullins is my cash guy.
Very good. Dre, you want to throw in some names there at QB?
I pretty much have almost all those names. My pool is the same. As I mentioned before, Fields, Lawrence, Mayfield, Smith, Flacco, and Mullins. That's all I'm on today. Like I said, I'm just getting well over the field on Baker, Geno, and Flacco, and Lawrence as much as I possibly can today.
Very good. Okay, let's kick it to running back. TJ, I feel like it's the same names from FanDuel.
A lot of the same names. The toughest thing you're deciding what to do with is Ty Chandler. I think you're probably on DraftKings. I think you're probably playing him in cash. It's tough with Alexander Madison there. It may take away from it. One of the biggest reasons I'm torn is he's projected for 5 or 6 more points in the RotoGrinders projections than the Bliss projections, and I like to split the two down the middle. But that's the one that has a very different projection between the two of them. And so going with the RotoGrinders ones, I think you just play Ty Chandler in cash. The reason I am a little bit skeptical is because Devin Singletary, Chuba Hubbard, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson also are all totally viable, great cash game options. And even Jonathan Taylor here is totally fine in cash. So I think in a cash game setting, you are essentially making sure you're playing 3 of Chandler, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Devin Singletary, Chuba Hubbard, and Bijan Robinson. So 3 of those 6. But it is tough to narrow down. I like plugging in my receivers, my quarterback, my tight end, and then seeing what I have left for the running backs. My preference right now, so if I look at my cash game lineup, it's currently in flux because I don't actually have it set yet. But the one I last had was Bijan Robinson, Chuba Hubbard, and Devin Singletary. The one I had before that was Bijan Robinson, Ty Chandler, and Devin Singletary. The one I had before that was Hubbard, Chandler, and Singletary. So it's it switches each time I do it, but it's always combo of those 6 guys.
Okay, Dre, I guess if there's 6 good plays, is there not one that's going to be super chalky? So tournament-wise, can you use the same dudes, or do you feel that's too high ownership?
I mean, you can use the same guys, and it's hard to get different with running back because but actually it's not even hard because there's so many good running back plays, in my opinion, today. I have my running back pools of by far probably the biggest has been all year. I'm not that high on Ty Chandler because of the situation. Even though I think he will get majority of work, I'm just going to be a little bit under the field on him. I think I'd rather just pay 100 more, go to Chuba Hubbard, who we know has a guaranteed role, or go down, and because I like Roschon Johnson a lot. I'm getting well over the field on him. I think he's in a fantastic position. I think he's going to receive majority of the work. He can catch passes at the backfield and as well as run the ball here. So I think you can see about 16 touches today. And all he has to do is make a big play with, and you compare him with Justin Fields as well as DJ Moore, and I think you're in a good spot. So I like using him to get over the field in tournaments and being different than everyone else.
Wonderful. I love that cheap play there. I kind of needed that. That really completed my build. Any other names, TJ?
I like the Roshan Johnson call. I also think Khalil Herbert is sneaky and large field tournament stuff, just in case he is the one that say they get an equal amount of touches. Khalil Herbert at like 1% ownership, even cheaper if you're playing large field stuff is interesting. And then I don't want to forget about both Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane. Specifically wrote Mostert for me on DraftKings because he's so cheap, but Achane has the explosion as well. Both of them are coming in at single-digit ownership. Love both of them for tournaments.
The difficult part is just trying to figure out which one of those two dudes you want, right?
It is, but Raheem Mostert is currently coming in at 3% ownership, and he's leading the league in touchdowns.
That's insane. Yeah, by a lot, too. He's got a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah.
Okay, Dre, any other names you want to throw in at running back, or shall we kick it to receiver?
No, I would just be also over the field on, like I said, Kenneth Walker here. I think it's a good spot for him, and that's really it.
Okay, great. TJ, let's talk wide receiver. You piqued my interest when you mentioned that you got some cheapies, but go ahead, start at the top, who you like, and then we'll get down into the dumpster as well.
So for cash games, you're playing Justin Jefferson and Dontavion Wicks, and then you're choosing a third, and maybe a fourth if you want to run a fourth receiver at flex. But Wicks and Justin Jefferson are the guys you're playing in cash games, and then your third option is DJ Moore, Drake London, Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson as the primary players you're playing there. So depending on how much salary you have left, Garrett Wilson probably my first choice, but I don't mind Drake London. I don't mind DJ Moore if you can get up there. I just have a tough time getting there. For tournaments, I'm playing a lot of receivers with my stack. So Amari Cooper with my Flacco teams, DJ Moore with my Justin Fields teams, Calvin Ridley with my Trevor Lawrence teams, Garrett Wilson with my Trevor Siemian teams. But like you asked for, Roth, I do have some cheapies that I like taking shots for on tournaments as well. Parker Washington, 3,800 on Jacksonville. Somewhat cash viable if you really need it, but more I'd rather play him for tournaments. He's stepping into the Christian Kirk position. Doesn't quite get as many targets as Kirk does, but still, he's running the routes. He's on the field. Trevor Lawrence is back. DJ Montgomery, the exact same thing, but for Michael Pittman. We don't know if DJ Montgomery is going to get a ton of targets, but what we do know is DJ Montgomery, after Michael Pittman got hurt last week, came in, ran his routes, and played his position. So we probably get more targets to the Alec Pierces at 4K. The Josh Downs is at 5K. But if you need a really cheap guy, DJ Montgomery is 3,300 and should be on the field. Finally, and then I'll leave Jameson Williams to Dre because I know Dre liked Jameson Williams, but I do got some of him in tournaments as well. But my favorite today in tournaments is Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks is $3,100. He was a absolute just monster last year. Young receiver. Will Levis didn't look to him very often. Ryan Tannehill did. Ryan Tannehill loved Treylon Burks. He's 3,100. He's healthy now. And Westbrook Akine just got put on injured reserve, one of the other guys he was competing for snaps with. So Burks should be out there as basically a full-time receiver at 3,100 with a guy who loves throwing him the ball a lot. I think he is my favorite tournament play, cheap tournament play on the slate at $3,100.
Okay, very good. Dre, your thoughts here at receiver?
I'll just pick it up right where he was talking about with Jameson Williamson. I think he saw the second. He pretty much says I think more now coming to the role as a secondary receiver. Granted, the team that he's playing against plays a lot of zone, but I think he can beat the zone and make a big play, and that's what I'm looking for with him at this price. So, and with his speed and upside, so I think he's a fantastic play today. I definitely would roster a lot of him if you can. I also do. Hold on, let me go to it. Who I do like a lot. You mentioned Parker Washington. I love him today. as just a little bit of a cheap option. So I would definitely play him a lot. But I'm gonna get much exposure as I can. Like I said, on JSN and Curtis Samuel when it comes to these cheaper guys in the mid fours range. I think they're great options. I don't mind Drake London, Romeo Dobbs. I'm getting a little bit exposure to, but not a lot. I love Garrett Wilson. I love Addison. I think DeAndre Hopkins is a great play too. Though his ownership is going to be there, but probably not as high as it should. A little bit should be because I think, like you said, 10 of them targets these guys a lot more, Burks and Hopkins. So I'm looking forward to that. I do like these Buccaneers receivers are not getting much ownership as they should. So Godwin and Mike Evans, I'm going to be well over the field on them, and Amari Cooper and DK Metcalf, like I spoke about before on the other site, but definitely more on this site because it's a full point PPR as well.
Okay, very good. Let's kick it to tight end here. By the way, that cheap receiver value just saved my whole build. I didn't know what the hell I was doing until just now. So I'm glad that exists. TJ, what are we doing at tight end?
Cash games, you're playing Trey McBride once again. I typically hate playing two tight ends. I typically hate playing a tight end at the flex. I think you can do it this week. It's a stupidly strong week at tight ends. Trey McBride is your cash game option. He is the best play from an optimal perspective. But David Njoku, who has just been stupidly hot since the guy burned his face on fire. TJ Hawkinson, we love Nick Mullins. Might as well pair TJ Hawkinson with him. Great first name, great hands. Probably going to score a touchdown today. Evan Ingram, without Christian Kirk, has been picking up a lot more targets. Now he gets Trevor Lawrence back. He's great. Cole Kmet, pair him with a chalky Justin Fields. If everybody's running Justin Fields, the way to get different with him is don't just play DJ Moore, but do a double stack. Do it with Cole Kmet too. Heck, do a triple stack. Throw a cheap Darrell Mooney in there if you really want to. Sam Laporta, I think, is the most interesting one for tournaments today. Nobody's playing him. He's projected for 4% owned. He's been the best tight end in football this year, outside of maybe Trey McBride or Travis Kelce, because it's the return of the tight end. There's so many good tight ends this year. But Laporta, I think, is the most interesting for tournaments at 4% ownership. And then if you need cheapies, you got Tyler Conklin, Tucker Kraft, Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts, all perfectly viable. But in cash, you're playing Trey McBride.
Okay, a lot of names there. You got any to add to the list, Trey?
It's pretty much all those guys. My tight list is short. Njoku, Kraft, McBride, Evan Ingram, Cole Kmet, Hawkinson, and Laporta. That's all I have.
Okay, very good. Let's briefly talk about defense here on DK. I assume, we probably have already spent too much time on it, but just in case people are tuning in, TJ, what's the cash defense?
Cash defense is the New York Jets.
Okay, and then Dre, you got any thoughts tournament-wise?
Miami.
Yeah, that's so interesting because my first thought was I wanted to go on the other side of that. I want to stack the offense there, but that's scary that you say it.
Miami's my highest owned tournament defense too. I'm on the same page.
Vomit. I hate it. Okay. We got 5 minutes until lock. Let's dive into it.
If you need a super cheap one for your lineup, Roth, I like the Vikings at super low ownership going against Detroit. Goff has struggled more on the road, and they just blitz an absolute ton. So they could give up some points, but they could also get some turnovers. And then I don't hate the Buccaneers or the Panthers either. But I agree. I like the Dolphins.
Okay. Very good. Let's see what we got here. Jumping into some QQs, fire them in the YouTube chat, and certainly make sure you're hanging out with us in the Discord as well. This is a DK single entry GPP question. Dre, I'm giving it to you. I've got Achane and Ford at running back. I really don't like any running back, 5,200 or less. Am I sleeping on someone in that price range? So basically, if I pay up for most start, I have to get someone in that range. So 5,200 or cheaper. DK single entry, Dre. Felt like we had options.
DK single. You said Ford. I don't like either one of them. You said Ford or who?
So he's got Achane and Ford, and he needs a $5,200 running back.
All right, give me 1 second to look that up for him real quick.
Okay.
Is this DraftKings?
Yeah, this is DK.
Go, Roshan.
I'm about to say Roshan Justin. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my lineups in right now too. At the same time.
Yeah. All good, man. All good. All right. Roshan it is. FanDuel Cash TJ, is Lawrence okay at QB?
No. Play Mullins or Fields in cash.
Okay. TJ, can I do Baker, Mike Evans stacks? Because that's kind of where I'm landing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. Very nice. Let's see what else we got. If you got any questions, throw them on in, friends. This was 11:51. Here we go. Large field, last piece in a GPP. Michael Wilson, Jameson Williams, or anybody under 3.7, TJ. GPP last piece, Wilson, Williams, or anybody. Jameson. Yeah. Very good. FanDuel single entry. Dre, I'm going to give this to you as you're trying to get those entries in. Breece Hall and Carolina defense, or Bijan and Seattle defense?
The first one.
Okay, great. Carolina guy, TJ, season-long question, Laporta or McBride? What an embarrassment of riches this guy has right now. You got
it's still McBride.
Wow, okay. DKGPP, TJ, Alex Pierce and Amon, or Metcalf and Chandler?
Metcalf and Chandler.
Okay. What do we got next? Steve O says DKGPP. Any interest in Romeo Doubs?
Yeah,
everybody go with Wicks. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay. Large field, TJ, need a wide receiver on DK 5,900 or less. I'm considering Thielen currently. We got less than 2 minutes. Garrett Wilson. Easy. Love it. All right. Devin says FanDuel.
Or Tyler Lockett if you want to get more different.
Okay. Great. 2v2. TJ, I'm coming to you with this FanDuel cash question. We're about a minute out until lock here. White and Drake London, or Ty Chandler and Wilson?
Oof, that is tough. Just because of the uncertainty with Chandler, I'd go White and London.
Okay.
I agree.
Very good. Let's see if we got any more of these QQs coming in here. FanDuel single entry. Dre, you want Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson?
Breece.
FanDuel cash question, TJ. Calvin Ridley and Rashad White, or DJ Moore and Devin Singletary?
Ridley and White, or Moore and Singletary? Moore and Singletary.
Okay.
Or sorry, that was cash. It'd be Ridley and White.
Okay. Excellent, guys. I think most people are starting to tune us out, turn on some football. Make sure you hit us a little thumbs up before you leave. Remember, this show is free, and we want to keep it that way for you as long as humanly possible. Also, don't forget to check out our props and pick'em package. You get access to RotoGrinders, all new props and pick'ems at a special holiday discount right now. This is driven by the RG Premium Projections. Our tool helps you find your best sports books, the best pick'em sites, finding you the best odds for your pick'ems. For a limited time, you get 50% off for your first month by clicking the link in the description below the video. So make sure you're doing that. People are all about the props and pick'ems these days. And with that, gentlemen, we have done all the things. We have answered all the questions. Anything else we need to address before we bounce?
No, I would say just good luck to everyone. Good luck to everyone. Hope you finish second in the contest I'm in.
There it is.
Hope you played a lot of Roshan Johnson. I think he's going to smash today. Yeah.
Very good. Hey, guys, personal note, thank you for just walking me through the slate. I came into it, literally had not looked at a thing. You helped me out figuring out how to host the show, and I feel like I built some pretty damn good lineups here. So I'm excited about how today is going to go. Excellent stuff as always. TJ, Dre, and our wonderful production crew, always working hard behind the scenes. Guys, we appreciate you. We love you, and we will catch you tomorrow. You have been crushed.